Although they did start working with the Beals revolver in the year of 1856, it would not be the same as what you think of the Remington New Model Army today.
And if you're like me, you're into the history stuff, the books, like the guns are worth their weight in gold. Because a gun, it's fun to shoot, it's fun to point with, but without the story there, if you're a history person like I am, without the story, it really doesn't mean all that
Ruger Security 9.
Can I redraw?
You already looked?
No.
You sure
Alright.
you did?
Now on 3.
Another pro, at least a pro to me, is these guns are kind of a project. I like to look at them as I'm getting an advanced kit build in the mail whenever I get one. So it's a project that you can go down the road and you can either leave it as
Most people believe that the Walker was Colt's first extent to a very, very large pistol, but it wasn't. This was. This is Colt's 1839 to patent firearms revolving carbine pistol. It is massive.
Hello, everybody. We are back. And Duke, you're still me. Oh, no, he's fast. He unmuted himself real quick there. It has been a while since we have done a reload show, and we're not going back to regular reload shows just yet, probably till the middle of the summer. But we had a special guest that Duke and I had got a wonderful opportunity to spend the weekend with last weekend, and that is Sheldon the Saboteur, as you guys know him from the comments section. I want you all to make him feel welcome. He is one of the as far as Native American history goes, I am just impressed with his depth of knowledge. Let's put it that way. He's really, really good with it. And so, of course, we have Duke and Snapper all together for the first time in like 3 months.
It's been a while.
So we'll get into talking here a little bit, but I want to go down and run through the comments and say hello to everybody. We have Diane Houston says, good evening, all. Gunsmith 4570 said hello to all. Louisiana Grays in said, well, good evening to all. Looking forward to the show. Mill Creek Range said, hey, everyone. Sitting here loading up 44 mag this evening. Jeremy P said, hi, everybody. This came at a good time. I needed a break from fitting a new hammer and trigger and grip frame on my flat top 44 Ruger. Ooh, nice. Kodak Tackman said, what's going on, y'all? By Landon C said, good evening, everyone. Let's see. Hello, folks. Tilgath, Blazer 3. Howdy. Brandon Burke said, howdy, y'all. Havar, I guess that's pronounced how you pronounce it, says, I'm not sure. He says, nice. Mill Creek Range said, welcome. Angelica said, hello, all. And David W said, hello, guys. And do I have any wrenches in the audience? I guess not. So we got them all on trip. So here we go. Anyway, Duke disappeared. How are we going to drain any bottles? Oh, okay. Gotcha. So anyway, we had a great weekend up at Fort Larned. Hi, Duke. Anyway, got to meet Sheldon here, and it was just a great time. We got to set up the civilian camp, and Duke and Sheldon and I and Henry, and it was had a really good time. Met some of you guys. Some of you guys came and saw us and talked to us, and so that was a good time all together. And I just want to get down here since Sheldon's kind of our guest. I got to kind of ask him, what got you in? I think I know, but what kind of got you into all this history that you've been studying here lately, Sheldon?
I want to say just thank you for inviting me to this. What got me just into it was back when I was a teenager. I was just getting into more reading into accounts and getting into more of my tribal history. The more you got into it, the more refined. There is a little period where I stopped reading into it, and then one of the major things that got me like into the historic firearms aspect was I was 18 and I wanted a handgun, and the only thing that I could get was a Captain Ball.
Yeah.
Welcome to the United States. You can carry one if you're like overseas in the military, but you can't carry one here in the States. It's kind of sad.
Yeah. So I was running around with the 51 Navy for a while. I started getting upgrading slowly, and just more wanted to see. I just found the history aspect more interesting the more I read into it. And the parallels, that you can even see nowadays, even if things are different.
Oh, definitely.
100%.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
Well, you showed up to Fort Larned with an unbelievable weapon. And I wish I had a picture of that to show. I don't think I have it on this PC. But you got a picture of that, Duke, you can throw on there?
Give me about 5 minutes.
Okay, let's see if we can show this because you can tell us all about it. But while we're waiting on that snapper, a long time no see.
I know. I've been wanting to be on the lives again for a long time. I've just been crazy busy.
Yeah. Any new firearms or experiences or?
No, I actually haven't really been able to play with the firearms too much lately. Only other thing was that flask. We all know where that's at now.
Yeah. I was trying to get Sheldon to use it while we were up there, but he was already well done, and I was with the Spencer. But I did carry it in my bag the whole time I was there.
Did you ever get it to open?
Nope.
And start to move? No. I never played with it too much just because I filled it full of like penetrating sprays and whatnot just to make it easier. But I never got to play with it too much.
Well, it's still sitting over there. And if you guys in the chat don't know what we're talking about, it is a dram flask for a smooth bore or a rifle. Basically, it's like a flask, but it's like your powder horn, but it comes afterwards. It's not for pistols. It's got a huge measurement spout on it, and we found that was made by what company? The American, was it Flask and Cap Company?
I think that's what it was from. I think you guys, I looked it up too. I found the information that was on it, and I want to say it was from like the 1850s.
Yeah, it was from 1855, and it was original. And so he sent it down for me to reenact with, and I offered to buy it from him, and he just gave it to me. That was nice of him. Very nice.
Well,
so anyway, let's get over here and read a few more comments. We stopped David W. Louisiana Gray said, glad to see you, Snapper. Doug Duke said, good evening. Hope to see a video from Larned. I didn't take one because
Park Service has changed their rules so much, we'd have to pay $125 to whip out a phone and take a video and put on here.
And to be perfectly honest, I locked my phone. I'm half a mile away in the pickup for 3 days and never even thought about looking at it.
That's a good idea.
After working at Bent's for 8 seasons, Fort Laramie, or 7 seasons at Bent, 3 seasons at Fort Laramie, it's going through my pictures. I found 15 pictures in a 10-year period for doing reenactments. So I had this thing there with me so I could take pictures.
I was 4 days without, or 3 days there without electricity, without phones, without nothing, just living the dream, really, except for the wind.
That sounds like paradise.
Miles an hour.
That sounds like paradise, even with.
It was all right from sun up to sundown. It was just the night that was so fun stuff. Storms and wind, and Sheldon and I even had to knock our tent down one time.
Yeah, that tent would have been nice if the poles fit the frame.
Yeah, we had about a 4-inch gap between the bottom of the tent and the ground.
And I went to kick one of the legs out from under that tent. I kicked the leg, and it wasn't the tent leg.
Down he went under the tent. Then he tried to get out again.
No, first I kicked Sheldon in the leg. And then I took the tent leg and I boom on my back. I throw on my back, hit the ground.
Well, so we was making fun of Sheldon about something about he was been walking around in moccasins with holes for a couple days. I remember at the very end he said something about he'd seen me stumble and he'd seen Duke fall, so he had nothing to be ashamed of.
So explain this event a little more. What was it all about? What was the entire reenactment? Was it about one certain aspect, or was it about just the entire history of Fort Lauderdale?
It was about Hancock's War, so it was set in May of 1867. It was set the time we were there of the year, but in 1867. Yeah. And so that made it really, which was fine. I mean, your clothes and everything, it's kind of fun because then you got to nail the clothing aspect and the firearms aspect down to a date. And Sheldon and I were talking about the 66 Winchester, how it was possible it could have been there, but it wouldn't have been normal. Didn't you have a date for the first sale of the 66s there, Sheldon?
Yeah, off of Rare Winchester site, I don't know how if they ever update it, but their website said that the first known sales were of August of 67, and they were both carbines.
So that would have been, and I looked up, they only made 700 of them in 67. So we were like, well, we can honestly say I think the 66s were kind of out for that reenactment. So, and we couldn't do civilians with trapdoors yet, really, unless it was a. So I went with the Spencer. Duke went with the Henry. Sheldon had a. Well, he had a Lehman rifle, but he had another weapon here. I hope Duke's ready to show us.
I just got it uploaded. It's not the best picture, but you can kind of see it. I don't know if we can zoom in or not, but you want
Go
me
ahead
to
and throw it up there when you're ready. There it is.
Yeah.
So you look at his arm there. What is that called, Sheldon?
Like a knife war club.
It's got 3 knives in it, and it's a nasty looking piece.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
I need to get better pictures of it, but the pictures I got of it are when it's on my workbench. I don't want to show that workbench off.
Well, it's just,
I know that feeling.
And you had to blunt the blades before we went in, but that was so cool because it's a historical weapon, right? You built it from pictures.
Yeah, so there's a picture of he's a Itazicho chief, Spotted Eagle, and his is the one I mainly copied, especially the brass tack pattern stuff. He had different kind of blades, but I don't think they make reproduction of those blades. So I just went with the regular Green River butcher knife. The body where the blades go into, I had to shorten that a little bit because I screwed up, so that's why it's a little off shape. But it still works.
I think
and I'm trying to figure out how to store it in my place because I'm scared of it.
Hang it on 2 hooks above your head, above your bed.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's not how you want to wake up or never wake up.
And we got to talk about that decoration you have in your hair. It looks like it's over your shoulder here, but it's actually tied to a 3rd braid in the back of your hair. What is that called, that long string of discs that you made there?
I've seen them get called hair drops.
Mm-hmm.
And the one I kind of try to copy was Duke showed me them, but there's a Lakota up at they're in the Fort Laramie Treaty, and he has his back turned to everybody, and you can see it running down his back. He even has some in his. He looked like he was wearing a Hardy hat. He had some discs in that too. But the more you look at those Fort Laramie pictures, you see more and more Lakotas wearing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them vary. Some of them have little on the trailing end of the leather. It has little spots and other stuff, and some of them are graduated real big to going down to real small.
You talking about the discs?
Yeah.
I can't see him wearing that every day unless it was for ceremony.
Yeah, honestly, from my understanding, there was no ceremonial significance to it. It was just jewelry.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
It made you look good.
I just know when we helped you put it there in your hair, you had your chin up and you weren't going to look at the ground very easily.
I think it weighs about maybe 3-5 pounds.
Yeah, it was crazy, but it was a very cool piece of history, and everybody there was, talking about it, and the war club. I was walking around the square. I always walk around the square with you because you drew all the attention.
It wasn't because of my award-winning personality.
I think it was. I really do think it was. You had people worried when you didn't show up for meals or whatnot. So. Oh, but yeah. Dick says, that Henry in the picture? Yes, sir, it was.
Yep, that's Henry Crawford. So right there, that's the 4 of us that were down there in the civilian camp.
Oh, yeah. Dick was kind of heading the thing up, and, well, he was pretty unreconstructed the whole time.
Because they kept wanting to put me in that blue Yankee uniform.
Dude,
you don't look
almost had a couple of bouts there.
Yeah.
Well, that and he didn't want to wear his vest in the mess hall, so and take his guns off.
Boy.
Oh, it was good times. But
So
yeah.
that's funny.
Sound like you guys had a blast.
I was walking by the mess hall, and the guy that's doing the mess hall sergeant, he was playing the character accurate. They did have Victorian rules for meal times, but he was being a little bit obnoxious about it. And I just walked by the door of the barracks, and he yells at me, "No weapons, need a vest." And I walked in there and I said, "What are you serving?" He says, "It's on the table." I said, "I know it's on the table, but what is it that I would have to disarm to eat?" And he said, "Beef and rice." And I just looked at him and I said, "I'm not disarming for beef and rice," and walked out.
So we spent the rest of the time eating in the kitchen in the back for the civilians, and I was washing the coffee pot a few times there, but we did manage to eat. We ate better than they did in the mess hall, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Garrett had to wash a coffee pot to get me a glass of lemonade.
It all worked out in the end. And then we had to haul the lemonade half a mile, it seemed like, for you to get a drink. Sheldon must have given up about halfway across the parade ground because I remember I hauled it the rest of the way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not used to wearing moccasins, so my feet were getting sore.
Yeah, you had some really nice hard-soled moccasins, but you had them on inside out, right?
Yeah, I ended up sewing them inside out, or so the stuff that was supposed to be on the inside were on the outside, and I was like, we're just gonna roll with it. I don't feel like undoing all stitches and sewing it back up.
I don't blame you.
No, they look
They
good.
look
It looks
good.
all right. And you made those leggings and everything out of South Union Mills wool?
Yeah, they're shroud cloth or trade cloth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know one of them, I think it was the one I was running on my right leg, I cut the wrong direction, so I was actually starting to panic because that little white edge you see, when I first cut it, it went around my ankle. And I was thinking about, like, no, that's not right. So I was sitting there trying to make sure there was enough fabric there to fix so it can wrap around my leg the correct way, and there was. So that was a crisis averted because that wool is not cheap.
Yeah, would you say that run you about $300 to make that or something like that?
Yeah, like each yard of fabric cost about $90 with $10 shipping.
Wow.
No,
Mm-hmm.
wool is not cheap. It's interesting, though, doing a specific date because I ordered some wool pants, but they didn't get in time. And so I had to wear my canvas pants. And the whole time I was like self-conscious because I was 2 years ahead of time before duck canvas would have been a thing. So I was a little self-conscious about that.
But this is where I got to give Sheldon credit because, the stuff we're wearing, me, Garrett, Henry, we've either purchased or had somebody make it for us. Sheldon's had to make all of that stuff that he's got in that picture, except for the shirt, right? You bought the shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to make all of that by himself.
It's funny,
So
there's
that's awesome.
there's no historic emporium for Lakota, is there?
Not really.
Yeah, I just thought of
noticed,
that. That's
I'm
That's
I'm not
crazy.
wearing my Dentalium choker.
Right.
That thing would have been nice to have in the picture just because of the work that went into that too.
Yeah.
I
There's
didn't
a
see
lot
you
of
wear it
hours
all.
into that.
Did you ever wear it?
Yeah, I wore it a few times.
I must just
The edges on the leather were kind of digging into my neck, so I took it off every now and then.
Why don't you tell us that story about those shells that you told me when you were holding that up? That was an interesting story.
If you could bring up a picture so some people could see what they are, because
You got
I think the majority.
Let me see what I can find here.
Dick's
Okay.
got the picture into things. He actually knows how to run this better than I do.
I don't know if I've got a picture of you wearing it or not. Let me look, and then if I don't, I'll find a picture of it.
Okay.
Let me go through a few comments here. We have Arizona Ghost Riders. Hi, Santee. He said, you group of
Hey, Santee.
rapscallions, keep up the great work. Thank you. Skinny Pedal Down said, hello from Idaho. Thanks, guys. Jersey Red said, hey, you Duke. Carson Branham said, buenas noches, compadres. Classic Guns Today said, hello, turning in during an evening hike. Oh, that's cool. Carson Branham said, come on, guys, 36 watchers and 14 likes. We can do better. Yeah, we got 46 now. Angry Ranger said, evening, gentlemen. Using my phone to bounce Wi-Fi via Bluetooth to my phone. Doug Dukes, Henry, yes, it was. An Angry Ranger said, evening, gents. Using my phone to bounce Wi-Fi off of my tablet via Bluetooth. I'm not tech savvy. I hope I can keep it going and visit with y'all. Well, we hope so, too. Darvis says, I really want a Charlottesville. Well, they can be had. The Tennessean says, howdy, folks. And Darvis said, hello from Minnesota. And we are caught up in the chat. So if you guys have any more questions or anything, shoot them out there. We don't have a real subject this week. We're just having a friendly conversation. Can you take this picture down, Dick, so we can see each other?
Yeah, give me just a second here, and I will be right on it. So I found an actual picture of those things being used.
And there's Travis Lynn is in. He said, enjoyed meeting you all this evening. And yes, now I know who you are. Yeah, he was around on Saturday, and he walked up and introduced himself to us, and we had a pretty good conversation about trapdoors.
Oh, yeah, I remember that guy, yeah. I can't remember names to save my life, but I can remember when you put a context to it.
He come to Larned from Kansas City, so that must have been quite a trip.
I hope he didn't come just to see us. That might have been a disappointment.
Yeah, we were just hanging out under that half tarp.
By the time that people started showing up in our camp, we were also tired. We're sitting there laying there, taking an afternoon nap, and then we just nicely all get laid down, and everybody shows up.
Yep.
That's how it always goes.
We found out Duke and Henry can give pretty good speech from sitting down on the ground.
It's authentic to first person.
What's that?
It gives a kind of a more authentic feel for first person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was part of your plan.
There were supposed to be some people there reenacting the 7th Cavalry.
Yeah.
They never showed up. So I'm just sitting there and people walk up and it's like, oh, what are you guys all doing? So I just go into my spiel. It's like, yeah, we was guiding some wagons across and because we was told this would be a little bit safer route, and we got burned out between here and Fort Dodge, and being I'm out of a job, come back to look to see if I can scout for the cavalry, and they ain't showed up yet.
Yeah. And then they did their cavalry reenactment right in the camp.
Yeah, didn't even bother to tell us. I was like, Garrett, I'm sitting there. I just nicely got laid down.
20 people show up all at once.
And all
Once
of a
we had
sudden-
all week.
Garrett's like, oh, there's a bunch of people coming. And I stand up there, and I've done it long enough that I know when people show up like that and get in a line, they're there for a program. And the one guy said something about he was complaining about having to change uniforms 5 times that day, and said he guessed he was doing the cavalry program. And And I was like, oh, okay, they're doing their program down here, didn't tell us. And then that's when I found out that the reason why there was an army wagon down there is for the cavalry. Us civilians weren't really supposed to be using it, but they didn't show up. So,
Yeah, you went first person though. You informed them that Joe Milner had gotten drunk and led the cavalry off to Fort Dodge. So that's exactly why they weren't there.
yeah, that was the thing I come up with is because California Joe Milner, he was a guide for the 7th Cavalry during Hancock's war and into the Washita campaign. And Custer, he was very good friends with Custer, and Custer made him chief of scouts. And he got drunk, and Custer took that title away from him and gave it to, if I remember right, I think he gave it to Charlie Reynolds.
Yeah,
So I know Charlie Reynolds became one of his favorite scouts too. But yeah, California Joe Milner, he was around at that time, and he's a guy that they wanted me to portray him up there at Fort Laramie, but the years that we did up there, he wasn't in that area. He was down there in Kansas.
I'm jealous. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Really?
I've never ever done a reenactment. I've always wanted to.
I was informed that it was not a reenactment; it was a historical interpretation.
It's
Either
living
way.
history. There's a
Either
difference
way.
between reenactment and living history. Reenactment is you're doing a specific event or representing a specific person that existed. So like a battle, when you're doing Gettysburg, that's a
Yeah.
reenactment. You're reenacting what happened that day. What we're doing is we're portraying the general everyday life of somebody that would have been around at that time. So it's not really a reenactment per se, as it's a living history portrayal.
I
And if
just
you
want
do
to
it-
dress up like I'm in the Old West, pretend I'm in the Old West, and wear all the clothes like I'm in the Old West, and hold my guns like I'm in the Old West, and forget that I'm living in the 2020s. That's all I want. That's all I'm asking for.
What's hilarious is like before we went, and I knew this already, but it really was driven home after a couple days. If you watch a 1950s Western, Duke told me this before we left, the only thing people in the Old West would recognize about a 1950s Western is that the horse has 4 legs. That's exactly the truth. And it don't drive home till you live it for a few days, and then you're like, yeah, that's just, it's not.
You know, thinking about that, how weird it would have been for people extremely old people to watch the Western. I bet you they were not Western fans.
No, probably not.
I'd love to hear somebody who was still alive, like 90 years old, watching John Wayne. See, just to hear their portrayal. Like, well, what do you really think?
What is that you're wearing? Belt loops?
Yeah, we got to have some fun experiences. Got to learn some historical things. I got to learn what happened. What happens when you drop your Colt down in a gopher hole.
Uh-oh.
I had to take that thing apart because it bounded up. The gopher hole dust bound a Colt up and wouldn't operate.
What was it, the 51?
No, it was a 60 Army.
Okay, explain this. What happened? Exactly what happened to keep it from moving
That was
there?
the one you bought for me, right?
No, that was mine that did that.
But it had the barrel off mine on it.
Right, yeah, because
That
that's what
barrel binds guns up. It just always has.
But no, it wasn't the barrel that bounded up. What had happened was I got down to lay down and take an afternoon nap after everybody had disappeared again. And if you want to know the reason why I was taking afternoon naps is my allergies were killing me. So it's like I laid down and go to sleep at night and I'd sneeze my head off all night. So the afternoon when nobody's around, it's like I'm catching up on my sleep or I'm going to be a zombie by the time I go home. But anyway, yeah, I was laying down there and I took them off. And when I took it off, I went to go around behind me and pull out and I dropped the belt, everything down in it wasn't a gopher hole, but it's where he piled his dust up. And that's the holster that fell in there. And when I picked it up, it's covered in dust. I figured it was bind up, but yeah, it bounded up. I pulled it out of there and It wouldn't turn at all. The thing that saved me is that the chief ranger there, when he was inspecting my guns, got after me about carrying it on half cock. And I'm like, yeah, for historical accuracy, I should have it on half cock. Because, that's the way they did it back then.
Safety.
If that hadn't been on half cock, I would have never got that cylinder off because the bolt would have been locked into the stop.
Could you pull the front barrel off of it and then be able to just pull the cylinder off and then it should work?
And then I got the cylinder off. And after I got the cylinder off and blew down into the inside, all of a sudden it went to working. There was a little bit of dirt that had got between the cylinder and the base pin. And once I got the cylinder off, it went to working fine.
See, that's good information to know because I personally don't drop my guns. You know, it's just not a thing I do or like to do if I do. But it's good to know those things because
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of the stuff is just us shooting. Hey, we're getting fouling, right? But I don't know what it's like to, I don't know, stick it in a golfer hole. So I don't know if that's what kind of dirt's really going to bound it up. How hard is it to unbound the gun? That's still one of my favorite things was that fouling video I did with how it fouled up and how easy it was to unfoul the gun with just a little bit of spit. But stuff like that I find that interesting.
The dust was the consistency of baby powder.
Mhm.
It was super fine dust.
You would think that wouldn't even bind it up. That's crazy.
well, I
That's
think
interesting.
you
Well,
might have had a
Consider the
clause.
Do you think
holster
it-
kind of went down in. The holster acted like a scoop, and when I picked it back up and the gun tipped back up, it was like just taking a handful of dirt and just drinking all over it.
Did you
So,
have a lot of lube on the gun?
What's that?
Did you have a lot of lube on the gun?
No, it was dry.
Oh, well, that's even crazier because I would figure that the lube would cause it to, then turn into a paste and cause it to get
Well,
stuck.
He also didn't take it out and try it right away. It wasn't until he was
No,
a little
I was
later,
a couple hours
halfway.
later.
Yeah, so
Ah,
it really had a chance to bind up.
That's
One
crazy.
thing about an event like that, you'll figure out your gear, whether it's going to work for you or not. I had a knife sheath on that I had tucked inside the belt, and then I had a lace tying it on. And every time the way it was rigged on there, every time I took the belt off, it dropped my knife out of my sheath on the ground, like every single time. So I'm going to have to do something different for the next go round. Sheldon, did you learn anything about your gear while you were out there that you do different?
I would say the a little like shoulder holster I had. I would definitely use like a thicker piece of like buckskin for a strap.
Yep. I wish I had a picture of that too. You made a very cool holster that can go over your shoulder or hang over your neck. It's just kind of a bag holster.
And
Oh,
I'm
you
trying to find, like I said, I'm trying to find like at least an original ledger drawing of someone using them because I seen one that said Cheyenne. I seen one that said it's like, but I don't really actually know where to look for ledger drawings half the time. So we usually find ledger drawings when we find them.
Well, that was something I learned while I was there because, of course, I was hitting all the old timers up there about the trapdoors because that's kind of one of the reasons I was there. I had an opportunity to just talk to so many people about trapdoors and the guys and as I was talking to the what do you call him? He's in charge of what's his position there, Duke? George?
I don't know what his is. I know he's chief ranger, but I don't know if he's. But yeah, he's pretty high up there.
And he's been doing it for almost 50 years, and he's been there at the fort for like that long. And so I had the opportunity to just really bend his ear and get some information. And something that just blew me away was he said we had 1865 58 rimfire rifles issued to Fort Larned. And I said, really? Because the only records I have of them are going to Casper, Wyoming. A couple went to Virginia, and the rest of them supposedly stayed in Washington, D.C. I said, where's that in the record? And he said something just blew me away. He said it's in the archaeological record, and that's the only record that matters. I said,
Good
well,
point.
that blew me away. I was like, well, I need to change that video. And then Sheldon, he's like, oh, yeah, I've got all these references to 1865s being out west. And I was like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, because after the Cheyenne,
Don't you love that?
They recovered one of those.
Yeah.
Up there.
But they're not, according to the Army, they never left Washington, D.C. But like Duke said, a lot of records have disappeared. So,
Yeah, there was in the 1950s, there was a great purge. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the records for Fort Laramie wound up at, was in that great purge. Yeah, just because there's no record of it doesn't mean that record didn't exist at one point in time. There's a lot of things that can go wrong between here and there.
yeah.
It's like at Bent's Fort, that place operated for 16 years. We've only got one paper record that come out of that fort for sure. 100% was signed right there on the trade counter. And that's the transaction with old Bill Williams, 1843.
Yep.
See, that would be my luck. If I borrowed something or had to do something, my paperwork, my receipt where I had to return something or pay something back would be the only thing that exists a couple hundred years later.
Right.
Everybody else's would go missing, though.
I was just impressed that he told me that Fort Larned had been issued every single conversion. So that means even the 1870 was there. And he said it was just one of the first places after they would get them from Leavenworth. And being where it was on the Santa Fe Trail, they got the first conversions most of the time. And I was just, Dick knows when the trapdoor demonstrations were going on, I tended to disappear. So
It's like I've been to so many of those. It's like, oh, they're firing a cannon. I'm just going to watch them over here at my vantage point, laying down.
But anyway, let's get back over here to some questions here. We had Tennessean said, is that an original Spencer you had, Gary? Yeah, I took an original Spencer. Like I said, I was limited on what I could take and feel right about because I wanted to take a double barrel percussion shotgun, but I didn't really have one. I got one coming now, but didn't have one in time. And so of all the guns I have, when you narrow it down to early 1867, you get really limited, you know, if you're going to be accurate. And so I was going to take either that or we're going to take the Ethan's Lehman rifle. But the character I was portraying, the Lehman rifle didn't really fit him because he was more well-to-do. So I took the Spencer and I took the original 1860 Army. And that was a good time. I enjoyed it.
That must have been fun carrying those around.
Mm-hmm. Got some attention.
Yeah.
Let's see. Travis Lynn said it's about a 4-hour drive. Yeah, from Kansas City. Well, I hope it was worth it. Old one guy said, "Good evening, guys." Doug Duke said, "Garrett, take the knife off your belt before you take the belt off." Well, I had the sheath lashed to my belt, so I got to where I take the knife out of the sheath. Byland and C said, "Duke, was there no Crisco on that 1860? Never would have bound up if you'd slathered it in Crisco prior to the event."
100% true.
I probably would have been better with bear grease.
Okay, Travis Lynn said, "How many trapdoors do they have now?" If you mean us, 14 or 15.
All of them? All of them. I think like 1 or 2 are missing. That's about it.
Yeah, I don't have an 1879 or like I call it the 1877 third variation, so I need that one. And
I think the shotgun version is the coolest by far.
I need the 1906 bayonet or training rifle, and I really want one of those 1940s rope launchers that they took to Normandy. They made those out of trapdoors. So.
Yep.
Hey, Garrett, was that the right thing that I showed you that time? I was like, you need this, that one that looks like it was just made out of a 2x4. Was that the right training rifle?
No, that wasn't the right one, but it was someone somebody had made up. Oh,
yeah, it looked like just a 2x4, somewhat painted like a trapdoor.
At the Fort Larned, they have a bunch of them, but they have, because of park rules, they have to fire replicas. So as far as I know, I think they have the only 1866 replicas possibly in existence. Don't they, Duke?
That's cool.
Yep. Yeah, that was way back in the day because they ordered some and Fort Laramie was supposed to get a couple, and then Fort Laramie, I guess, dropped out or couldn't afford it or what the story was there. But yeah, the one variation you got to get those, the Whaler trapdoor.
That's the rope launcher?
Well, I know that they used
the harpoon launcher.
The harpoon, yeah. Yeah, that
would be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be a lot of fun.
The thing about those is I got to get one because everybody laughs when they say they used the trapdoor way too long, all the way to the Spanish-American War. I said, little do you know they used it all the way to the Normandy landing because they took these rope launchers, they took these trapdoors, cut them down, and made rope launchers out of them. Now,
is that what they were shooting from the water over top the Rangers ended up climbing up? Were they using trapdoors for shooting those ropes?
There is 2 different rope launchers. One of them is a mortar rope launcher, and when you talk about point du hoc, that's mostly what they're using.
Oh, okay.
They had a trapdoor rope launchers for other things that were there and were fired. For one thing, to pull small craft into launch the rope, pull small craft into larger craft, things like that. But yes, a couple of them did go up. And it's funny because they're 1884 trapdoors that are just cut down. The only issue is to get one, you've got to get a tax stamp because they're 12-inch barrel. And so,
Oh, fine.
yeah, so I got to do that eventually. But I always tell people when they say they used them way too long, I said, yeah, all the way up to Normandy.
Here's a question for you. If you can't find one, could you make one out of a gun that was already messed up, somebody sporterized?
Yeah.
Or that's probably your best bet
By land and
if you
sea
can't
said,
find one.
By land and sea said line throwing guns, yes, and he probably knows way more about them than I do. I'm gonna have to get in with him on information on those. So anyway, we're gonna get away from
I'll
that.
pull up the picture of those shells that Sheldon
Yeah.
was talking about. Throw that up there.
Oh, that's cool.
I feel like I typed in the shells and these two historic photos popped up, so I'm like, let's put it in historic context.
That one on
Yeah,
the
so-
right must have been wealthy.
Both of them.
Go ahead, Sheldon.
Yeah, because
Her entire shirt.
it's a yoke. It goes like her sleeves to up to maybe her middle of her chest.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
no, they were traded out this way by trade routes and stuff because they're really popular with the Northwest tribes of like Northern California, Washington, Oregon,
Uh-huh.
and then they start making their way here. Like there were ways to measure the wealth you made. Men and women both wore earrings. Nowadays, only the women wear the earrings. Well, I think really women are the only ones that really wear dentalium nowadays. But men occasionally do. But I mean, nowadays they're almost a status of wealth again too because it's expensive.
Yeah.
So what are they exactly? They're curved little shells, right?
Yeah, they're a mollusk.
Ah.
That's a shell of a little mollusk. They used to be found along the northwest coast, but because of people, modern day society, whatnot, pollution and stuff, they kind of died out. So they're mainly farmed out of like Southeast Asia now. There's two kinds. There's like a smooth, and those are worth more because they're smooth and they're like more older. Versus you have ones that are more like scalloped, and those are like younger ones that they farmed out quick.
So are there straight ones and curved ones? Is what you're telling me?
No, only curved. So the story is back in the teepee days. There was a boy. He wanted to be a heyoka, and a heyoka is a sacred clown. They do everything backwards. Like you say, hurry up, run. He's gonna walk. You say shoot. You say, give me this. He's gonna hand you something different.
Mhm.
And so he's just gonna. They're called sacred clowns, but so this one boy, he wanted to be one, and it was him and his sister, and his sister probably had earrings like the one on the right, on the right, and she she loves them. They're expensive, pretty. And he says, what is the word? I can't remember the word for young little sister in Lakota right now. But he says, I came back from the village up the river. They have earrings like yours, but they're straight. If you strained out your shells on your earrings, you'd be even prettier. And she's like, yeah, that sounds good. So they get in their heads that they can straighten out their shells because the earrings he was talking about are those bone pipe shells that are easy to get, but they were brand new and he never seen them. She never seen them. So he gets the idea that they're gonna get her earrings and place them between two rocks and like push them, like, smash them to the straight. And those shells are fragile, so they get the idea, they're ready, and he like pushes down. He's trying to get them straight out, and you hear crunching, and he takes off the rock. All those shells are broken, and she gets mad. She gets mad that why did I listen to you, and look what you did to my earrings. And he kind of I don't remember, he takes off running or something. But after that, they start calling him shell straightener or straightens shells. Has he tried that?
He tried to straighten the shell,
He who straightens shells.
make them more valuable.
Yeah, it didn't really work. And the same
You would think
sibling.
you could almost
I told-
grind it flat, but not crush it flat.
Well, they're if you see like close up pictures of them, they're more curved.
Gotcha.
They're very interesting.
They are cool looking.
Yeah, they're cool and they're kind of a pain in the butt to make.
I'm sure that's what makes them so expensive, or as a sign of wealth of that time. It's hard to get, probably, depending on where you're at, and the amount of time and effort it takes to make jewelry or clothing out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a choker.
Yeah, it was
That's
a pain in
cool.
the butt to make.
He didn't want me to straighten his choker, I guess. It looked like a lot of work. It really did. Okay. You can probably go ahead and take that down, Duke, if you want.
Give me just a second.
He's still looking for pictures. So over here, just a little bit more. There we go. Comment sections. Victor Schultz is in. Can you see the screen, Saboteur? Because I don't know how to pronounce what Carson's saying.
Haida and Squamish, I think those are Californian tribes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Or that northwest coast.
He said they used them as money and a store of value. And
yeah, they're valuable
that's cool.
even nowadays.
It's kind of like what wampum was over on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So it's basically they're making jewelry out of money in a way. That's cool.
Yeah. It's kind of like making jewelry out of gold.
yeah.
I gotcha.
So do they have to go out in the ocean for them?
Yeah.
That's probably why they're expensive.
I don't know much about the California tribes, but yeah, that's what they most likely did, was have nets and stuff and got them, or baskets.
Man, interesting. Great Pilgrims.
Because you can.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was saying,
we
you can
interrupt
find
each other
them
all
up
the
to
time.
2.5. You can find them up to like 2.5 inches and shorter. And I think 2.5 is the longest I've seen.
Hey, make a breastplate. You probably wouldn't be.
I want to. I want to. I have a bunch, and you see some warriors back in the day wear them too. But I think some Crow women are wearing them too, and it wasn't uncommon back then for like the women to wear some of their husband's stuff.
Yeah.
Not everything, but
I've learned a lot about native stuff ever since I met Sheldon. This stuff I had no clue of. He's a wealth of knowledge. So Sheldon, when you just to get into this group a little bit here, did you just hear that Duke worked up at Fort Larned or Laramie, so you just went up and met him, or did you already go there pretty consistently?
Well, I was watching your guys' channels and enjoyed everything.
Yeah.
And I was reading. The heck was I reading? I don't remember. It might have been Black Elk Speaks or something. And then, getting the history things, I always keep talking about Fort Laramie. Must be far. I look it up, it's like 4 hours away. I'm like, not that far. It's far, but not that far. And then I was like, one of these days I'll go there, and then just never did. And then you started seeing your guys' videos about it. I was like, maybe I should,
Mm-hmm.
I go down there, look around, and when I went there with my friend, and we get there, we have to use the restroom, so we're hightailing. We don't know where nothing is, so we didn't know there was a bathroom by the cavalry barracks. So we run into the visitor center, ask where it is, and they say, "Oh, it's around back." So we rush out of there, go around, whatever. Then we start looking around, going to each building real slow. Then we finally get to the little 1866?
1876.
Jailhouse. 1876 jailhouse. And the door is closed, and we're sitting there. We're sitting there looking. I'm like, the door is closed. I don't think we can go in there. No, just check the door, see if it's unlocked. My friend was saying, check the door, see if it's unlocked. I was like, I don't know, it's locked, it's closed. They probably don't want us in there. I look in the window, I could see the cannons and stuff. Like, hey, maybe we can. So I grabbed the doorknob and as soon as I opened it, like enough to like peek my head through, Duke's over a loudspeaker. Hey, welcome to Fort Laramie, folks. We got this because he said it real loud. I jerked out that door and slammed that door.
Oh, that's a good story. And Duke had no idea who you were. He must have just been messing with you.
No, we didn't really. I didn't meet him just yet, and it was just like timing. It was like the timing was all there. So we went looking around. We went looking around some more, and we finally go in the VC center or visitor center, and looking up books. And Duke's behind counter with I don't know who that was anymore.
I was reading some book.
But I bought a book. I still haven't read it. Well, introduce myself to Duke and take off, and this is where Duke can pick up the story.
Yeah, I'm sitting there reading a book, and there's this Sheldon and his friends walking around there. And I kind of look up and look around, see what's going on. He looks over and he says, "I watch your YouTube channel." And then what's funny is he tells me his name. We talked there a little bit, and I ring him up. And he goes out the door, and I'm sitting there like, Sheldon. I know there's a Sheldon I talked to on the chat. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden his last name pops into my head, and I was like, can't be. So I go running out there to find him, and they're driving away, and I'm like, oh well, he'll pop up in the chat one of these days. And then he pops up under a different name on the chat, and I was like, oh, maybe it wasn't who I thought it was. And then discovered each other on Facebook, and I was like, nope, yep, that was the right name.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to not have a saboteur in the chat helping us out.
Yeah.
But here he's helping us out on the show. Oh, and that's a good story. And then next thing you know, you were not reenacting. You were living history.
Yeah, what set that off was ask Duke if he wanted to trade rifles.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting talking outside of Walmart. Like, oh, we'd love to have you down at the fort, and then that set that off.
Yeah.
First,
yeah. I was like, yeah, he knows his stuff. We need to have him.
And what did he do? Showed up with a pair of moccasins, and he took your clothes for the first round. And how did that go?
He showed up and forgot his moccasins at home.
Oh yeah, okay.
But yeah, no, we did that fur trade event last. It was last June. Was it June or May?
One or two.
Yeah, it was right at the end. Well, it was right after Memorial Day, so it's probably about the 1st of June.
Okay.
And this first fur trade event we've done at Fort Laramie for a long time, a really long time. Like 2016 was the last one done, so 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, we've got 4 reenactors, well, living historians. Got old buddy Sam up there that had worked there for years. He did fur trade. And you have me. And I invited Sheldon down for that. And then we got a guy that was kind of cast upon us. And I had my doubts. I'm not going to say names.
Was this Blueberry Cobbler?
Yeah. I'm not going to say names. This guy never done fur trade before. Steps out of his tent with a 10-gallon white Stetson with plastic beads all the way around. Wants to wear big plastic beaded necklaces. Said he had a Red River cart. He shows up with a chuck wagon pup with a welded galvanized steel stand for the tongue. And then he's got all of his plastic gearboxes, all of his cot and everything, his big cooler with his pickles and stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this guy ain't doing fur trade, and he's got more here in his camp than what we have in all of our camps combined together.
Nice.
And I was thinking, it's like, oh boy, here we go. We put him on one side of the camp. That was Farb City. And then we had the history camp on the other side. and Sam, my buddy Sam had his wedge tent. We was going to throw up another tent for a trader, but I thought, one trader with a bunch of Farby gear is more than enough, so we'll just stick with the teepee. And we had Sheldon there, and so I got Sheldon some clothes. He borrowed a pair of my pants that I made for my first fur trade thing, my own personal pants, and I'm sitting there, and we get up the next morning, and Farb City's got a jar of pickles out on the table, a bunch of other Farby stuff, and it's like, all right, we need to get this stuff put away and get going. And I turn around and look over here, and here's Sheldon. And we'd given him a bunch of the gear to use that we had there at the fort. So we had a shield that was made by a guy out of the Black Hills, a bow with a scabbard, arrows. We got him up as best we could. Here he is over there. He's got everything set out in front of his teeth, and he's sitting there sewing moccasins. And I'm sitting there thinking, the new guy, his first reenactment, he looked off, and the Farb City guy over here has been doing it for 40 years. And I'm kind of here in the middle, like, well, yeah, my gear ain't the best, but yeah. And then, I sit there and watch it. It's like, yeah, there's definitely a knack for people that can do this kind of thing. And yeah, Sheldon, you pulled it off perfect.
Thank you.
So you got to stay
never ever. Yeah, never ever. You need to just go burn those pants, Duke.
I take it this was your buckskins.
Yeah, there's a pair, and they're chrome tan. They're smoke colored chrome tan. But a buddy of mine told me, he says, put a little neat's foot oil on them that makes them look more authentic. Well, he didn't say how much neat's foot to put on these things. And so I had them out on the clothesline for a week, and they were still dripping. They gained 10 pounds in weight just in neat's foot oil. And the thing of it is, I made those in 2015. And to this day, I can pick them up and wring them and still get oil out of them.
And you made sure for a whole weekend?
And I put poor Sheldon in these pants.
That's why next, when they had what was that, Civil War
Yeah.
event, they weren't the best, but I got a blanket off of Crazy Crow and turned those into leggings, and they were much better. Hey, the breeze was nice.
Well, you didn't mind being a little drafty then, huh? Oh, I just can't believe you got to stay in a teepee.
I know that teepee had the same issue as that wedge tent.
As our tent.
Well, a teepee didn't have a door.
It didn't have a door, but there were still little arches.
Yeah, and it didn't have a liner either, because the way I was taught to put them up is you put them up a little bit off the ground on that outside ring, and then you put the liner in there, and that's what creates your draft to lift your smoke up, which would have worked perfect if I'd had put the liner in it.
Yeah. And then Duke chickened out, and he went to sleep in the office.
Oh.
Well, that was one of those things.
I was messing.
I was set up by the river, and I thought, oh, perfect. We'll set up by the river. We'll set up down there on them sandbars, because, when you sleep on the sandbar, it gets pretty comfortable after the first night. Your body kind of moves that sand, and you get. No, I set that teepee up right on top of an old gravel bar. When we would set that thing up, I actually bent one of those iron stakes over like a hurricane stake. I bent it trying to drive it down through that gravel. And I'm thinking, Lord Almighty, this is not going to be a comfortable sleep. It was. I woke up middle of the night, and my knee said, no more of this. Go find somewhere else to sleep.
Was that when you slept under the pool table?
No, that was at Bent's Fort, and that was because that was cold that one December. But no, I went up to the visitor center, and I put a bunch of the benches together, and I slept on them. And because we've done that before, it's not the most comfortable sleep, but boy, it was better than sleeping on that ground. That ground was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I learned my lesson when we went to Fort Larned. I had 3 blankets folded up underneath me to make a little cushion.
Well, if you guys out there in the chat wanted to see, if any of you out there wants to super chat Sheldon $1,500 in a trailer, he'll bring a teepee to the next reenactment.
I gotta say, Sheldon, your equipment on this event Oh, it was
Oh, it's good.
spectacular. It was great. It was absolutely great.
I can become a real stickler on things to the point where if it doesn't almost look exactly like the picture, I actually get disheartened.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
So,
Well, I don't know many people who would take a 5-pound weight and tie it into a braid on the back of their head and walk around with it. So that's pretty dedicated right there.
Well, I thought that
I
when
wanna
you sent
make-
me the pictures, I thought, man, that thing's going to be beautiful. And then when I seen it in real life, I thought, man alive, he's going to need somebody to walk behind him and carry it.
I'm not joking. Even wearing it around, I think during that picture for a little bit after I took it out, I felt like the slightest like headache starting. I was like, we're not gonna wear this much.
Yeah.
Then he had a
I want to
bandolier.
make a smaller one out of brass, and have those kind of like graduate down.
Yeah.
Would it still reach the ground?
No, probably just like maybe waist.
Yeah, it seems like it would be difficult to get around with that thing on, but I mean that's kind of not the point.
I mean, they're mainly for jewelry. I think Alfred Miller, he has this picture of Fort Laramie back when it was Fort John or something, and it shows two Lakota like in that river, and he doesn't really paint them real good, but you can see little brass in their hair, and then there's the painting of the interior of Fort Laramie or whatever it was called when that painting was done. You see a lot of people wearing those too, but those ones are like that German silver.
So, having been there watching you struggle a little bit with that thing, what was harder, wearing it or braiding a third braid in the back of your head without being able to see what you're doing?
I would say the third braid.
That's what he was like. I want to wear it, but he's like, I don't know if I can get this third braid in here. And I just told him there'll be a bunch of white girls running around here in the next few days, probably be more than happy to help you braid a third braid in the back of your hair.
And he lied.
I did
There was
lie.
none.
I did lie. Well, there was one later on, but he knows what I'm talking about. Oh, that was fun. But anyway.
Yeah. Here's that Alfred Jacob Miller picture.
Oh, yeah, those are smaller.
Yeah. And they only go down almost looks like they just go the length of the braid.
Mm-hmm.
Can you bring up that one, the picture of the one from the 68 treaty?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find that.
Because that's more like what he had on.
I think there's a group
I got-
picture where they're all sitting down and you see an older man wear one and his wraps around him.
Let me see if I can find those pictures.
Let me run through a few comments while you're doing that. Gray Pilgrim said, hey, Garrett, regards your short rifle. I have an R35 that has a cone muzzle brake attached to it to get it long enough. R35 is a 1935 carbine made from 1886 LaBelle rifle. Yeah, I might be able to do that, but I don't know how authentic it would be for a line thrower. It might be all right. William Schlosser said, hi, everyone. Wayne Culbertson said, about forgot about you. Got in from church. Good to watch you all. Oh, well, it's good for you to be here. Alpine Gulch said, come to Pine Bluffs. Got plenty of room. Huge basement, too. Well, thank you for the invitation. Gina Wood said, good evening to our guys. Love you all. Squibload said, evening, guys. Wayne Culbertson said, I remember when in the early days of reenacting, everyone's sitting around with polyester shirts. He said, or one, a scout made his breechcloth out of burlap. He asked me if everyone had problems with their breechcloth. That doesn't sound too comfortable.
No.
Oh. So anyway, that catches us up. We've been running between 55 and 60 most of the night. We're doing pretty good.
I don't know, dude. Hearing you talk about the Ford City, I'm surprised you didn't hear a Honda startup, like a little Honda generator startup in the middle of the night.
If that would have happened, that guy would have been told to pack up and never come back. If I would have known that I could have told him to leave, I would have.
Yeah, Dick did pretty good sleeping in that pyramid tent though this time around. On the second morning, I didn't know if he was even going to wake up.
Well, me and another person there, we were slept in that second day. Apparently, that one picture that's got a really good one is not a compatible file, but I'll open this one. I think we can see them in there.
Oh yeah,
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 there you
yeah.
go.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to borrow Garrett's great coat to try to simulate that, but I forgot to ask.
Oh yeah, you could have. That would have been great.
That would have been really cool.
And he's got a
Right.
half stock Hawk, or not a Hawking. It's got a backlock Lehman. It looks like
Yeah, it's back action. Yeah.
cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So is that saddle you were telling me about, Sheldon?
Yeah. So like I said, the men and women have different styles, and every one time I see one that looks like that, it's always attributed to a woman.
Yeah.
But
There is a
I think that
Oh, go ahead.
I think at some point they didn't really bother.
They didn't care.
Yeah, there's a saddle tree company that they have it, and I won't repeat the name they got on there because it's kind of a no these days. But the one they've got, it has that horn on the front and the back.
Yeah. I think when they have the horn on the back, that's more of the woman thing because when you type them up, you see them like that. Like the men's were more subtle.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know if I've got the other picture here available. But there's another picture where you can see a saddle like that too. I think I've had that on the chat once before.
I have a picture I could send to Duke, but
There's one. I think the Reshaws or one of those guys have one at the 68 treaty.
Yeah, there's one that's got a picture that the Reshaws are in it. I don't know if it's the actual Reshaw. Let me see if I can find that right quick. Give me a minute.
We was at the reenactment, and the sheriff there, he had this little bitty single shot 20 gauge muzzle. I mean, just a baby little 20 gauge muzzle loader he built. It was the cutest little thing. And then he pulls out a warrant that says he's going after the Bent brothers. And I looked at him and I looked at that shotgun and I said, "You're going to need a bigger boat."
Yeah, he had a warrant for George Bent because George Bent actually had served in the Confederate Army, and he was paroled out to his brother Robert just before Sand Creek, a month or two before Sand Creek.
He had a double barrel shotgun for that job too, I guess. He was
I
going to
sent
need it.
Duke 2 of the pictures I have.
Okay, let me see here. Might take a minute to.
50 Tennessee CSA said 50 Tennessee CSA said, "I guess being plains guys, it's pretty easy, but us long hunters, well, LOL. I don't know how easy it is necessarily, especially if you're going to be like Duke and Henry and be like extreme on the extreme end of reenacting. I tell you what, when Duke turns on the reenacting, it's you flip a switch, don't you?
Yep,
he does.
He goes from Duke Frazier to the most unreconstructed rebel scout you ever seen in your life. He don't care if they ask him to hang that flag in a Yankee Blue uniform.
yeah,
Sitting on the porch singing Dixie. That was what a great moment.
That was the guy that was there, George, Chief Ranger guy. He asked me if I wanted to do it, and it was just a little inkling that I wanted to do it because I'd done it at Fort Laramie, and I just wanted to harken back to the days. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, I'm tired of wearing that stinking blue uniform, sweating it up, and smelling like a wet dog. And so, yeah, no, I just like, nope.
Well,
I can do it.
honestly, at that very moment, your first person acting kicked in too. I could tell it was.
It really kicked in.
And he gets pretty serious. I was pretty impressed when you throw in that first person. I've always heard how difficult it is, but all you wanted to do at that point was get your wagon so you could get some corn from Denver City to Fort Laramie. That's all you wanted to do. And I failed him, so.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, George walked away there, and I just started singing, "I'm a good old rebel." Now that's just.
He didn't like my Hoyt Axton version. He said it was too happy. Didn't exist yet.
And the thing is, the Hoyt Axton one, it is a little bit different. take on the tune, but the one that was in that movie, The Long Riders,
Yeah.
I cannot think of the guy who sings it. But that one is probably that one's more in
Randy-
tune with the actual one.
Randy Quaid tells him to play it.
Yeah,
I remember that much. Oh man, why can I not think of his name? He has albums out of it too. He's a real good.
yeah, I've got it on my
I
phone.
want to say Tim Murphy, but I don't know if that's his name.
I can find out right quick. Let's see here.
I think it's Murphy something or other.
Whoops, go in my library.
Talking about the Ford guy?
Is it Ford?
No, not Tennessee Ernie Ford, if that's who you're thinking of. No, it's he's later than that. This is Tim. I think his name's Tim Murphy. Just look up Long Rider soundtrack and it'll tell you.
Yeah, I've got it on my phone. I just can't.
I can tell you.
Ry Cooder. Ry
Copyright.
Cooder singing. Yeah, I hit the play button.
Yeah, I guess right. So
I'll be right back.
Snapper.
So
is
when do you
looking-
guys have another? So when do you guys have another living history event?
Well,
I'm not sure.
they were begging Duke to come back on Labor Day, but I think it all hinges on whether or not Duke's bargaining chip comes back on Labor Day.
Honestly,
Well, if,
I just besides standing there and looking pretty, I don't know. I felt like I had to explain, like me being down there because when you think Kansas, you don't think Lakota all the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but you
we
can
had
always
to
make
dig
a
into the
version.
history. No,
Yeah,
there was a sub band that was down there, and there was a couple. I think on like two Lakota teepees were found at the Washita.
Yeah.
That Hancock, when he was doing inventory, it was a combined Lakota and Cheyenne camp. So
Well, you were saying that Kidder had a Lakota Scout, so I can never think of his
yeah,
name. Red
yeah,
something.
and Red Bead.
Red Bead, yeah.
So
Yeah, I really want to
He
try
was
that
there.
one. It would just look like fun. Looks like so much fun. I think if I
It's
schedule one
fun.
out, actually put one on a schedule, I'll be able to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
honestly, Duke is kind of the schedule man because I don't actually know how to look around for these things.
Well, I just
And-
happened to hear about it back in October, and it was one of those that the guy that was organizing it, and he's an employee there at Fort Larned. I know he's big into the living history stuff, and so I thought, yeah, I'll try to get in on it. And yeah, I did use Sheldon as a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know if that actually was why I got okayed to come, but
I think they would have had you anyway.
I asked him. I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd be interested in playing a scout." And he says, "Okay." He says, "Yeah, we're gonna have a few scouts." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I got a Lakota friend that is interested in getting into that." And it's like, "Oh yeah, we'd be happy to have him too." So it was great.
Well, it's a
And
good
then-
thing you did because I think you were the only scout they had.
Yeah. Well, the
The Delaware
There was-
Scout, I guess.
there was a division in the civilians. There was 3 of them that hung out over there at the commissary. And the one guy, he plays Delaware Scout, which they were used. And then they had another couple other civilian guys. I don't know what their roles were. Well, one was the sheriff, but the others, I don't know what their roles were. But yeah, I think I was actually the scout. Henry he decided he wanted to play a buffalo hunter for a Santa Fe Caravan. So that's how he kind of fit in with us real well. But that's the thing is like, people that hired on as scouts, they weren't just scouts. That wasn't their only occupation.
Mhm.
Scouting was a short-term employment. It was good pay, but it was not for a long period of time. So some of those guys get paid a good amount of money, but they're only going to be used, a couple weeks.
No, they had to do other jobs like running around, be unconstructed, and get thrown out of the mess hall.
Yeah. But you'll find some of those guys at Scouts, they ran freight, like the Reshaws, the Richards, Louis Richard and Charlie Richard, hired on in '76 as Scouts for Crook. John Richard hired on as an interpreter at Fort Laramie for a short time. That was the older brother. So yeah, these guys, they did all kinds of jobs. They weren't just specifically Scouts. The Janices, they, if I remember right, they had a ranch. They did a little trading, along with, hiring on a scout. So it's one of those, if you play a general Western person, you're covered. That's one of the things I love about doing a civilian is you've got so many opportunities to do different things. I don't like.
Yeah, I can always be like a city slicker way out of his element. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Just traveler on the Santa Fe Trail.
That's exactly who I
I
was.
feel like real life and everything.
like our story was Duke had kind of led me out there, and then here I am without wagons, and I'm just hanging around with Duke now because I don't know what to do in the West.
I don't know who I am or where I am, but I'm here.
That's exactly what it was.
But it's one of those that for this particular event, the time period it was, you can get away with, you got a lot more opportunity for different impressions. But when you get into fur trade, it's one thing. You're a trapper.
Yeah.
That's because that's all that's going on out here, really. You might get in as a trader, but most of it you're going to be mountain man. So yeah, doing the 1860s, I really like doing that time period, 1860s, 1870s, because there's so much going on. You have more freedom for do other things.
And you
That's
get
also the coolest time in history too. I love the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Those are my favorite time.
And I've played soldier, up at Fort Laramie doing that. And it can be fun at times, but the thing about doing a soldier is that particular living history gets really expensive because you have to get a certain amount of gear. And, it's all got to be correct. If you're reenacting with a group, then you've got to match whatever unit that group is portraying. And so it starts to get more constricted.
I had a lot of fun with the research on this just because 1867, it's so narrow. By the time you get to 10 years later, the styles and everything open up a lot more.
Right.
But it's a lot of fun to try to, and I didn't get 100% perfect because, like I said, I had canvas pants, but it's really fun to try to narrow down. It's like putting a puzzle together. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah. The thing is with my gear is that the setup that I had, I could have been a buffalo hunter. I could have been a scout. I could have been a wagon master. I could have been a trader. I could have played any of those, it's out there in the West.
Yeah. And fine.
I'd love to do something in the mid 1870s because then I could carry a single action army around. It's like my dream is a real reason to actually carry a single action army around.
Oh, just seeing all the cap and ball pistols. Was
Well, you got to
cool.
go down there with.
Oh, that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna
That's
say.
why I love Tombstone so much. Is I can actually carry a gun belt with guns. I love that place for that.
If Sheldon doesn't come back, I'm gonna go find Leavenworth.
I'm here.
And tell him. Yeah, I know you're here, but I mean, if you don't come back to learn it, I'm gonna go find Leavenworth and tell him you didn't come back because you couldn't get your annuities. You're not
That Indian
Prairie
agent,
Apache, Kiowa.
He on character. He stayed with it.
Yeah.
And there's
And I
some of
asked
those
him, and so I asked him, "Did you hear what they did to the agent up in Minnesota back a couple years ago?"
That was good. He just got a look on his face like you probably ought to leave the agency right now. And here's Sheldon standing here with these 3 knives on this war club being told he can't get his annuities. That's why I said when he was inviting everybody to church, Sheldon, you should have just told him he can't go. I'm not Prairie Apache. I'm not Kiowa.
Oh man, I got my digs in on that one too.
You sure did. If we weren't going to get into religious talk, I would tell you right now that I come home laughing about that. I remember I told Mom, I said, I guarantee you he stood out there for 20 minutes figuring that one up when he realized what he had. Oh,
Oh,
I want to
man.
make another one of those clubs, but I want to make one that the Ogallala Sitting Bull had, but I'm trying to figure out how to figure out knives for his. Because
Yeah,
his
I've got-
look more like spear points.
I think he had
Hmm.
more of those Ripper knives.
Yeah, I was
Um,
looking at those rippers. I'm like,
I've got the picture, but I don't know if it's. I don't think it's the. It's not in a file that's supported on this one. Yeah, because some of those
Yeah,
pictures, they're all different files.
you
because
know,
I found even a PDF that talks about that, and the last one he had looked more like the one I had, but no one knows where either of them are, I think, or one's in the museum, either.
What was
One-
funny is up there at Fort Laramie, I had them order a bunch of. I had them order a Spontoon. I had them order one of those pipe hawks like what you had there, Sheldon, and then I had them order a gunstock club. And they all come in, and I'm expecting this gunstock club, to be that long. It comes in and it's like that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And I'm sitting there, I'm sitting there doing the talk, and I was like, this is the kind of clubs, and if this one, actually would have been like that, but they downsized it.
now, Sheldon, tell us about you told me about the only time that club with those knives was used that you'd read about. That was a pretty good story.
I've been looking for more, but they're kind of limited, especially out this way. Like you see them. I'm trying to remember if they were mentioned at Fetterman or not, but just don't quote me on that one.
Okay.
The only one time I can think of it being used is that Ogallala Sitting Bull. He used his last one, the 3-bladed one, at the flagpole incident at Red Cloud Agency, September of 1875.
Okay.
And that's when some of the hostile, quote unquote, hostile natives, low big man, they wanted the American presence out there and get the Americans to stop ordering them around. They killed the secretary because they thought it was the agent. But they accidentally killed the secretary, and those ones that didn't want the Americans around, they were trying to cut down that flagpole, or they did. And Sitting Bull the Ogallala, or Sitting Bull the Good, as he was called back then, he comes storming there on his horse, swinging that around, chasing everyone off. And
I would run if somebody was swinging that around me. I'd run pretty quick too.
Yeah, and the best way I could say it is because I got asked when I mentioned that once. I said, "Would you run away from someone swinging that?" I was like, "Yeah, especially if he's, basically, running around in his underwear, screaming off top of his head. Yeah, I'd run."
The only thing that would make it scary is if he was completely naked, because then you definitely would be running.
Yeah, he was only one.
I want to quote
He's
Dirty Harry movie so bad right now.
Oh my!
Yeah.
I really think that is the ultimate win. If you ever had to get away, strip off and just run towards people. I promise they won't fight. They're just going to run away.
Well, I
John
figure when a
Coulter
man's
did it.
running through with a butcher knife. He's not out collecting for the Red Cross.
Yeah.
And I did clean that quote up quite a bit.
Doug Dukes asked, Duke, are you headed to Taos for the 8th or rendezvous?
No, unfortunately, I burned up a good amount of my paid time off for this event. And so if I draw my Wyoming hunting tags, I have no PTO time as my other 3 days that I had, I've decided to use for other things. And so if I draw the tags, I can't do any other reenactments this year. I ain't going to have any time. If I don't draw the tags, then I might go up and we'll see what my standing is with Fort Laramie at that point. And I might go up and do their event, but in August, but I'm not holding my breath and I'm going to do much for the rest of this year. I might go to Fort Larned again in September. I think that would be fun.
I like Fort Larned.
Yeah, it's really good. For being a small park, they have a really good living history program
Mhm.
for these events. Granted, they only have a couple events every year, but when I was at Bent's Fort was the best. And when I left Bent's Fort became not so much the best anymore. So Fort Larned right now is probably one of the best out here, in the Western Parks for living history reenactments. Fort Laramie was good at one point in time. There was somebody that came in there that killed that. And, me and my boss spent most of last year trying to rebuild that. And I think it's one of those I figured it'd take 5 years. He thought we could get it done in a year. It was really off to a good start getting it done in a year. But the way things have gone with the Park Service, which I'm not going to get into that, but the way things have gone with the Park Services, I don't think it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Fort Union and North Dakota having their rendezvous event. But
Yeah, Fort Union has good stuff too up there.
well, I think they got spoiled by Michael, by Dad Hen.
Yeah, they have some good stuff up there, but I've never been up there. It's so far of a drive.
Mhm.
Because it's
Yeah, it's
4
like
hours
6
up there from Rapid City, and that's 8 hours from me.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says, Sheldon. All that you got, all Bad Hand has that you don't's a teepee, and when you get that, you'll be just as good.
So he on his Facebook, he was posting pictures of the 20-foot high buffalo high teepee he built. He said with the teepee with the hides for the teepee and 8 for the liner plus all the other robes for like the rugs and stuff. Said 50 buffalo hides to get all that.
That's
And
Jeez.
you say 50, so
stitched-
like $50,000 teepee setup.
Yeah, and he sold it all with sinew and everything, and he says he uses it for Lakota impressions, or he did. I think he donated it to Museum of the Mountain Man, because he said there's only 3 like new 20-foot teepees. The rest are smaller, but if I remember right, and he could, oh, hold up.
Gotcha. All right, I'll go through a few comments here while he's off. Snapper's looking for a Colt. Yeah, Carson said it's better to be a bargaining chip than a buffalo chip. Yes, it is. 5010 Tennessee CSA said I need to form a galvanized Yankee unit for out that way.
Trader.
You still wore the blue. That's kind of like the first day Saboteur and I just talked about trailers. When Sheldon and I were walking around the first day, and he sees somebody walking down the road, and he goes, "Deserter," and I go, "That's somebody walking down a road." He's like, "We should stop the deserter," and I said, "You got the club? Go get him." And he said, "Give me your sharps." And so he was like, we was laughing about it, and then pretty soon here comes the army back with their deserter. It was part of the reenactment. It was a deserter. I said, well, you're a pretty good scout, Sheldon. You saw that deserter coming this morning from a mile away.
How funny would that have been if you brought him in without even knowing it?
Yeah,
That
come
would've
bring
been
him
funny.
in and have them 3 soldiers out there looking for him all day long.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
The real funny part of it is they brought him up there, and they take him to the officer, and the officer says, "Take him to the guardhouse," and they walk away, and the officer looks over there and says, "They still got the keys and the handcuffs."
Oh yeah. Okay, Jason Dunham says, "Evening, y'all." I gotta say, I had a bad week before that with things going on in the family, and it's like unplug, no phone, no electricity, eat indoors with the light coming through the window. Lots of like-minded people there to talk about trapdoors, people there to talk about history, people there to talk about clothes. Lots of advice for young guys getting into it. It was breath of fresh air that whole time. I loved it so much.
Awesome. And that's one of the great things about going to doing this is that you get to disconnect from the modern times for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You actually get to kind of step out and step away. And it's awesome. So yeah, that's one of the things I've always loved about doing it is that I get to step out of today. I get to step back in time, and I'm a different person. You know, I don't worry about what's going on in the
Well,
world right now.
that's what I told you when we walked in there. I said we were walking down the road to go in there, and I told Duke, I said, isn't it so amazing that with all the wars and political turmoil and everything going on in the world right now, you and I don't know what happens after May 24th of 1867 right now. And there's enough going on back there, but you don't have to actually
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. I was reading through some comments. Jason, go ahead though. You were on a roll talking about Bad Hand, I think, and teepees and
Yeah, his I think. Hold on. I'm not. I think you guys can still hear me.
yeah, we hear you good.
Okay. It actually.
We did hear you. We lost you now. Maybe he'll be back. We can't hear you anymore, Sheldon.
Oh. Okay.
There you are. There you are. There you are.
Okay, I was able to hear you, but yeah, I think you just gotta close the browser. But yeah, I had a look at it. He said, yeah, I think he used I think for a 20 foot, I think that's when it kind of catches up where it's like 20 hides per foot basically. But yeah, he makes them and he has like, you know, and they're really nice. I think back when I was helping the local college, they were going to talk to a guy in the Black Hills who kind of makes them where you can go around help, you know, people learn how to make them.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was getting contacted about TP poles from my uncle, and they said that guy in the Black Hills, he wanted $2,500 for just a 12-foot buffalo hide TP.
That's pretty cheap.
I was about to say that's not bad
Yeah.
to count the cost of the hides.
I
Yeah.
wonder if you went to a company that slaughter buffalo for, you know, because you still buy buffalo
Yeah.
meat, right?
Yeah.
And see if they would donate any of the hides at all towards the idea of living history. Say, hey, this is what it's for. See if they would get behind it to at least give you a really good deal on it. Because you'd be amazed how a lot of these companies would do stuff like that.
Yeah, I got told
All you gotta do
one
is
in
ask.
Wyoming that I got told one in Wyoming that has buffalo rolls. There's a local butchery, but usually every time I call them, they never answer, or they say, "Oh, we'll get back to you." They never do. And
It's
because
not only
they used
that,
to,
the amount of hours once you have a raw hide.
yeah, because you can.
Yeah, you're gonna put a lot of time and effort.
Because if you buy, there is a buffalo hide book. It's not too thick. I think it might be like $20 or so. There's a description from the 1903 Chicago World Fair where they have some Cheyenne making a steer hide tea because they got steer hides.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was raining, it was taking them a long time. But it'd be like day one, got the hides, cleaned some, day two this, day two that. But they had a whole team of women doing it. That actually
Yeah.
know what they're doing. And I think like for however long it was, like a month, they still didn't get most of it done.
Go to your local college and say, hey, I need a whole bunch of people who's willing to know what it's like to actually turn this into an actual hide. We'll have an educational class on it. And before you know it, you got to think like that, Sheldon. You'll be amazed what you can get done with free labor.
Yeah, the college will do it, but they'll be like, "Oh, we're going to keep it at the end."
Oh, yeah, that is true. Normally. You have to pretend. Well, you don't have to pretend. You say, hey, this is actually for a real reason to represent the tribe, represent our people, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Because
I
I
think you'd
think
get away with it.
nowadays with how they butcher or skin buffalo and stuff in the factories,
Probably wouldn't come out the same.
no, there's a different way to do it. So the way to do it back then and the way you should do it now to get like a square-ish hide is instead of running on the inside of the leg, you run on like the back of the leg and the front of the leg, like from the hoof down to the brisket, like the front of the leg, and in the back from basically the hoof down to, you know,
I
the
get
tail
what you're
section.
saying.
And then you do that, and you get it out. It's more of a square versus how they look now. So because how they look now, you have to get more heights and make up that gap.
Yeah.
Right.
And it takes a lot of work to process that to get it to the point of being ready to tan. And tanning itself
Oh yeah.
is a lot of work because
Mm-hmm.
I've scraped on a buffalo hide out there at Bent's. We started with a green hide that had been taken off of a buffalo. I mean, they skinned the buffalo, wrapped it up, put it in the freezer, thawed it out, and we were scraping on it, so we had to flesh it first. That hide, and this was a young cow, that hide was that thick.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting there trying to cut the holes to drive the pegs in. And I don't care how sharp your knife is, you can't cut. We was actually having to take our knife, put our knife there, and smack it on the back with a stick
Yeah, that's what I was doing with mine too.
to puncture through. And that's when I realized that butcher knife that I got is worthless.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to
So
puncture.
one thing I've been learning is butcher knives and the skinning knives were like the more popular knives to be traded.
Yep.
But as soon as they got them, they did whatever the heck they wanted with them.
Yep.
They shortened them, or they got old knives that were shortened to do certain specific jobs, like just turn them into saws and all kind of stuff. So.
What's funny is we got a historical record up there at Fort Laramie. It talks about when they first got the curved skinning knives in. Because they didn't come in like the late 1850s, early 1860s. And it was Ward and Bullock that were running that up there. And they said that when the curved knives came in, they could not sell a single butcher knife to the natives. They all wanted those skinning knives with the dark wood handles. And we had skinning knives with dark wood handles up there on the shelf. But that was the ones like they could not keep in stock. It's like they couldn't sell anything else but those particular type of knives.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that aren't familiar with those skinning knives, if you've seen, your typical kitchen butcher knife, it's got a hump on the front of it, straight blade. Cock that 45, just swoop it up. I guess like a scimitar. It's really curved up. And the reason for that is when you're skinning, you're cutting as you flick your wrist the whole time. Whereas with a butcher knife, you're cutting and then you're just dragging the point across. Mm-hmm. But with that skinning knife, it's constant cut.
And so I messaged Duke about this and it was like back then a lot of them would only sharpen the knives to one side. Like just sit there with a file and take off one edge. And one day, someone smacked the cow and that cow was dead on the ditch. But I sat there and this was in January, by the way. The owner took the tag, so I was like, "Hey, free game! Coyotes is gonna be eating good." So I sat there and I had my skinning knife, a Green River. I only sharpened to one side. I was, doing my best to skin. And I tried to keep it honed, but it really wouldn't. And besides it being dead for a few hours, that hide was a pain in the butt to take off. With it just sharpened to one side. And then you really have to readjust and everything because it's only sharpened on one side.
Yeah. So I
So
back to the hides for teepees. You think you'll start with a canvas teepee?
I would definitely start with the canvas teepee.
What do you think? Could you have a canvas teepee in 60s?
Yeah. I think Hudson Bay was trading them out by the 50s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Spotted Tail, when he was living at Fort Laramie, by the time that he signed the 66 Fort Laramie Treaty, and people don't often realize that there was a 66 treaty that was signed up there. He was living in a Sibley tent, what they called the white man's teepee. And for anybody that's not familiar with a Sibley tent, just imagine a teepee with a single pole up the middle. And
okay.
So yeah, that's what he was living in. So canvas teepees are pretty common. If you look in, I don't know if I've got one of the 68 Fort Laramie photos. Let me see if I can add one here that's got.
Oh yeah, down at the camp. I forgot about that. Yeah.
They've got some pictures on camp. Apparently, none of them are in the right format. I can't upload them, but they've got. Well, there's another way I can do it here. Hold on, I just had realized I can't pull it up there if I've got them downloaded. Yep, I sure do.
Give me 1 minute, guys.
Okay.
There's one picture of some Cheyenne women working buffalo hides in the back. I think it's like early 70s, but you can see the teepee in the background. You can see the the seam running up from the canvas teepee.
I'm going to share this picture here, so it's going to take over the
Okay.
thing here. But if you look
Oh,
in this teepee here, you can see those lines. If you can see my mouse going, you can see the lines from the seams. That is a big canvas teepee. The one in the back there, I think, is a buffalo hide teepee. It's hard to tell, but this one right here, you can see those white lines right there. That's the where them strips of canvas go together.
Hmm.
And
Wonder
so
how
yeah,
long- Wonder how long a canvas teepee would last.
Long time, longer than the buffalo hide teepee.
Oh, longer than the
Yeah.
hides?
as long as you take
I
care of
think-
them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't lay them down in the rain.
We had that happen up at Fort Laramie. We had a big, almost 20-footer. I think it was an 18-footer. I don't remember. It was a big teepee. The canvas alone weighed about 175 pounds. I made the mistake one day and threw that on my shoulder. And but anyway, we put that up, and it blew down. And it was about a month before we could get enough people organized to get over and pick it up, because something or other would come up. And by the time we went over there to pick it up, it had been rained on. It had been on the ground. Sun had been wearing on it. We went over and picked that thing up, and it was rotten. It was gone. It was done. Well, I forgot. Yeah, before that, we'd set it up where we tried to set it up, and we couldn't get it set up because it was just too heavy with the amount of people we had. And so we went over there. It was a week or two later, and it had gotten a little bit wet. And in those wet spots, it had got a little black mold on it from just sitting on the ground, folded up. And every one of those spots where there was black mold, that canvas went just ripped. So by the time we got back to it after it had blown down, I mean, it was gone. There was like holes that we just pick up, and the whole that piece would stay on the ground, and the rest of the teepee. So, and that one was made out of canvas that was not treated. Like, you can get the new ones that are made with fireproof, sun forger, and mildew resistant that will last for 1,000 years as long as they're up and dry. This one didn't have any of that. It was just straight canvas, and it did not take long to rot out.
Yeah.
So as long as you took care of it, it would
Mhm.
last.
I think if I was to buy one, and from what I understand from like what Michael Badhand said, or him and some other native reenactors, if you go to rendezvous and you do not have a flame material teepee, you're basically just sleeping in it. If you want to fire, it's outside away from it.
Yeah. So all it takes is one spark.
Yeah. So that's what I want to get, is maybe a 12-foot one. But I wouldn't mind getting one because again, like Duke said, as long as, I mean, like anything, you take care of it, it's gonna last. According to Michael, he's a wealth of knowledge, and I hate to piggyback off, but he knows stuff. He knows the stuff.
Right.
He said if you take care of a buffalo hide teepee, you might stretch it out to 5 years.
Yeah.
3 years seems to be the average.
Man, for the cost
then-
of what it would cost to build one or put one together, that's not a very good return on investment, is it?
No, and then like that's one thing I like to bring up is if we go on what Michael says for your average for a 20-foot teepee, which wasn't the norm, it was a thing, but wasn't the norm. But with that, the amount of teepees for that, the 8 for the liner, and then all the robes and stuff, if it costs 50, if it's basically 50 hides for a buffalo, and every 2 to 3 years, people aren't set the same, but almost every year everyone's trying to make a teepee. That's strain on buffalo, especially with all the tribes doing the same
Yep.
thing.
That's for
And
And
then
that's
you figure into that the fur trade for the winter robes.
Like the cowhide I got is a winter robe, and that one was only like a heifer, and that's really nice fur.
Yeah.
And then there's like I remember one where this woman, they were interviewing her, or at least I think it was it might have just been a man transcribing it or something, but said if a woman would be the first one to notice if the teepee needs to be replaced. She'd tell her husband, and the husband will go. And if a husband kills 20 buffalo, which could, is a possibility, or at least wounds 20, out of those hides, he has to get the best 2 and take them. So the best 2 or more from that hunt and take them, and then she will get all the hides. When she gets enough, she basically hosts a little get together and honors all the women that she selected to go make the teepee. And all those women will make it or scrape the hides and get those hides ready and bring them back over, and they'll sit there and spend a while to stitch it.
Did they sew all the hides together, or were they just kind of stuck up? I have no idea.
There are patterns that there are original buffalo hide teepees out around. I think University of Kansas or Missouri or Oklahoma have an original Lakota one from the 1850s, and that's kind of where everyone got their basis for the patterns. Texican says don't go less than 14 foot. I might take them up on that, depending on how much it costs. But there's a way, like your first row, they're all basically the same, and then they just start getting modified as they go up.
Right.
I think the 2 tent flaps or the 2 smoke flaps are basically a hide or half hide.
I wonder if you could make it last longer using modern, any kind of modern tanning to make them last a lot longer than a couple of years now.
No,
not really possible. I have no idea. That's
brain tan. The modern chrome tan, when it gets wet, it starts to degrade really fast.
Right.
The traditional brain tan will outlast it as long as it's smoked. But even then, like that, we have a buffalo, or I say we, they have a buffalo hide teepee up there at Fort Laramie that I helped set up a couple times. We wanted to set it up for that fur trade event for Sheldon to stay in, but the weather was coming in, and it was one of those, we didn't want it getting wet. But the guy had larded it to help waterproof it, but we didn't want to get it wet because that's one of the reasons why those hides will start degrading is you start getting wet, dry, wet, and dry, wet, and dry. It takes its toll.
Starts getting all the oils and whatnot out of it. Yeah.
Do you think the buffalo hides would provide better insulation than the canvas?
Yes and no. So what really was the thing was that liner was, to if any air got swooped up, it'll send it up the smoke flap. And some, I don't know if it was Universal, it might have been, but there's an interview with the old woman back in the 1970s, and she was a little girl during the Wounded Knee massacre, and she said she grew up with her 2 grandmas in buffalo hide teepees, and she explains that they even had like a topper of sorts that they would put around the top, not like in like enough to where they could probably like kind of slouch in, and it basically be like a ball inside the teepee for when it got like the negatives. So it'd be like, so yeah, just imagine like a ball inside the teepee, and that's basically what it was. And then because that was actually interesting because you don't ever see anyone talk about that. So
yeah, what life would actually be with a really hot or really, really cold. That is pretty interesting.
Well, if it was really hot, they would just roll the teepee up, or and then you could they roll up. So basically, it's just the frame. You can see everyone in there doing their thing. So
kind of like what we had last weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that Saturday morning after you guys set up that tent. I look over there and I was like,
something ain't right.
There's bright orange tarp underneath everything. I was like, you guys might want to go hide that. I mean, you can put it out when you go to bed, but hide that during the day. And then I looked over at Henry's and his tarp that he had underneath his blankets was sticking out just a little bit on one corner.
Well, it's pretty bad when Duke looks right in your tent and don't even have to open the door because it's so high off the ground.
Right?
Ad poles were for a different tent.
I think so. Yes, I very much
Yeah.
think so. It wasn't so,
So
bad
hopefully-
if the wind wasn't blowing 80 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. I said I
Yeah,
wasn't
but that
even sure
wasn't
if I got
fun
any
at all.
sleep because it was cold.
And of course, I'm sitting in Henry's pyramid tent, and it was up off the ground too, because he stretched out the legs just a little bit too much. But it has little flaps that come underneath it, so you can put a ground tarp on top of that, and it's completely sealed. So those things that sit down. So I'm sitting there in that pyramid tent, and the wind's blowing, and I'm sitting there like, God, I'm not gonna be able to sleep at all. I crawl in there, and it's like it's dead quiet. It's nice and warm in here. I was like,
But
Sheldon.
there's a
should
reason
stay-
why. There's a reason why I didn't want to.
I was about to say it wasn't necessarily dead quiet on the outside.
I will just say this. I am convinced that the whole reason why beans were such a staple back in the 1800s diet. You had plenty of warmth in the night when they started acting up.
Oh, well, that was interesting.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well,
hopefully-
I gotta read a few comments
Okay.
here, guys, and then we'll get back
Okay.
to it. Okay. What do you have to say, Sheldon? Sorry.
I'll let you go read the comments.
Okay. Kodak Tackman, when Snapper a while back said he needed a reason to carry a single action army, he said, I carry one daily anyway.
Where I live is you can't really get away with that. I wish you could, but I can't.
Mill Creek Range said, Snapper, I'm hoping to make it to Tombstone in October for El Dorado Days. There you go.
That would be fun.
Tennessee.
I'm actually trying to get to Tombstone in October as well. So hopefully, hopefully.
Tennessean said, sorry to go off topic, but Garrett, are you still going to do a video on that Fox side by side? Yeah, I will. Been wrapped up in the trapdoor video here lately, but I'm done with it. So I'm working on a few other videos, and that'll be at the top of the list. Let's see. Texan said, late again, boys. Life's been beating me up recently. Work. Oh, that's too bad to hear. Wayne Culbertson said, I now portray 18th century artist. Kodak Tackman said, Texas 6 to feel your pain. Old one guy said, New Rockford, North Dakota has a buffalo processing plant. Bad Tortilla said, free labor. That was back when we were talking about video game Gooner said, fans allowed on. Not sure what he's talking about. Todd B said, Garrett, I was hoping you were going to adopt Duke. Well, Duke knows he's already been adopted by my parents. So he can stay.
They live 5 hours away.
So he can stay with you guys indefinitely and combine forces. Well, stay tuned because he's a big part of this upcoming Sunday's video. And I think I talked to you about this, Duke. I want to make a shorter version we're going to put a shorter version up on your channel. And so,
Yeah, and then I was previewing that to make sure everything was okay. And I'm sitting there watching it, and it's like Garrett had to put the one scene in there where I just about drop a trapdoor because the barrel.
well, it's accurate. They get hot.
Garrett had put 8 rounds through that thing. I'd put 8 rounds through that thing. And so I get up there to flip that thing open, and I'm trying to hold by the way because that barrel's hot. And I flip that door up, and when I do, I flipped it hard enough that I flip it out of my hand. And I managed to catch it before it hit the ground, but and then I grab it by the barrel when it drops. I'm like, oh God! And I'm like,
Well,
keep it together, keep it together.
You read about the wagon box fight. What's the one thing universally everybody says? Can't touch the rifle after 20 shots. Those big, heavy 50 caliber cartridge guns like that, no matter what they are, sharps, anything.
Black powder in general. After about 8, 9, 10 shots out of my Colt single action army, I can't touch it.
Yeah, it's just,
I saw the scar on my finger from last year when I was shooting that 1880. It got so hot it actually burned the skin and blistered and everything.
Well, just to explain, I added it as a little more difficult than you even think because this particular rifle we're shooting is a secondary rifle that has a broken ejector spring, and we were trying to prove that you could run it without the ejector spring because that was a historic thing. And so that's why he was trying to do the up and down and get everything running. And yeah, it was a warm run.
Yeah. But that one day that I filmed, I did like 3 or 4 videos with a single action army, and I was doing like the 45 Colt, Schofield, all these other ones. I put 100 rounds of black powder through that Colt single action army in mine, and I just was constantly loading and stuff. By the time I was getting to the end of that, I couldn't even touch the ejector, the bullseye ejector. That thing was so hot that I was just having to just kind of scrape my knuckle by it and tap those cartridges out. And of course, by then it was so fouled up, they wouldn't fall. Well, I got video on that too, but yeah, it would not let them drop out. So yeah, it was hot.
Yeah, and
Can you guys hear me? I had to just change out my earbud and get
yeah,
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but yeah, you're gonna see Duke on our channel, and I think since I have the ability to upload on Duke's channel, I'm gonna put at least one video up over there that'll be because this trapdoor video is over an hour and a half, was 2 hours and 15 minutes before I cut out the section on the cadet rifles and the short rifles and all that stuff. So we're down to an hour and a half, but we'll go over to Duke's and we'll upload a short version of it over there so that he gets something out of it too. Let's see. Franklin Horse said you shouldn't hoard teepee. Texan 1836 said don't go less than 14-foot lodge. Had a 14-foot and outgrew it when my daughter came along. Jared 1860 said a microclimate. I've set up a tent in my house when the power's gone out in the winter before. Corey said, I'll get back to that one in his question. Jason Dunn said, sound like what I heard about Buffalo Wallow fight down near Fort Elliott. It was in the trailer, wasn't it, Todd B? The moment when Duke nearly dropped the rifle. Yeah. Well, that gun had a lot of rounds, like I said, through it at that point. The only one that had more rounds was we did the full length rifle too, and it had quite a few rounds through it too. And
what was funny is I was able to whack that 300-yard gong offhand, but the thing was I noticed I was starting to get kind of wobbly. There at the end of it, I wasn't able to hold on the target as well. I think if I'd have been kneeling, I would have whacked it every time because I was putting them right under his feet.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because it's not actually in the video because I didn't put it in until the next video, but that was actually a complaint in 1869 was if you take 4 inches off the barrel and bring the overall weight down to 9 pounds, the soldiers can maintain target for an extended period of time longer. And I was thinking about that because you were talking about how you were so impressed that was a big, heavy round doing 1,200 feet per second and you weren't feeling the recoil. No. A lot of that is that big, heavy, long 3-band rifle. And you were talking about how the 45-70 you felt like kicked more. Yeah. A lot lighter rifle, 2-bander, 32 inches.
And I shot black powder. Of course, they were 500 grain bullets.
Yeah, so that bullet was heavier than what you were shooting.
Yeah, and those 500 grain bullets out of my Sharps 45-70 with 70 grains of powder. That Sharps rifle, it was 10 pounds, and boy, that thing would put a wallop on me.
Yeah, see that one you were dealing with there was 11 pounds and plus some, but you build less pressure with that bigger 50 caliber round, and it's 50 grains lighter than that 500 grain.
I can see why the 50-70 and the 50-90 were so popular in the early buffalo hunting days before the 45-110 come out. Just because those big 50s don't kick. They said like the 44-90, which was one that came out in 1869, I think is when that one came out. They said that was like one of the heaviest recoiling Sharps rounds was the 44-90.
That's what I love about that 50-70 because 1,200 feet per second is slow. And when you stretch it out to plus 300, we made one shot that day at 500 yards. Actually, it was a little more than that when I had messed up the yardage. And when we actually did go out and measure, I think yesterday Ethan did, turns out that was, we were plus 300 when you made those shots and closer to 6 when we were up on the hill. But, it's only doing 1,200 feet per second at the muzzle. And by the time you get to 300, it's going a lot slower than that. So it's like but it doesn't matter how slow it's going. When it hits that target, it's wham, it just hits like a sledgehammer.
It's getting hit by a heavy. What's that saying? Fat and slow is better than skinny and fast.
Yeah.
I want to say something, but my game kicked.
See, Duke, he knows how. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's go a few more comments here. It looks like Duke's getting tired. We're going 2 hours now. We're going to have to think about shutting her down eventually. Having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go soon, anyways. So
Yeah.
Well, my eyes are itching to. It's my allergy pills about wore off, so it's that time of night.
Okay, Corey8791 asks, sorry guys if I'm behind on these comments, but any update on GoX powder? They got it now. I've seen people testing
Yeah,
it.
it's out on the shelves, but it's expensive. $40 a
like
pack.
everything these days.
Yeah, go ahead. It's pretty. It's really expensive. God bless Dixie, home of the rebels. Said hello. Shooting 1860. Gotta go, gents. Fix a busted rolling block. Sorry about that. Jason Dunham said, okay, we were talking about Todd B said, I noticed when he about dropped the rifle. Byland and C said, shooting a Model 1868 and Model 1866 side by side, you will feel a difference in the recoil. Yeah. And we actually did that with the shorter 1866. And the funny thing was, I think it was because Duke had on more coat than I did. But I feel a little more dramatic difference in those two rifles than you did. You said it was pretty marginal for you.
Yeah, I noticed some more recoil, but I mean, my 12 gauge with duck shot in it kicks harder than that.
Oh yeah,
And it's a semi-auto with a padded recoil pad.
Well, there's an officer in 1869 his troops were trying to use it in a shooting competition. They had kind of like a Creedmoor competition, and he complained that the reason that they lost was the recoil was so severe as to lame the shoulder for 2 weeks.
Now I can see sitting in the prone.
It might.
That would knock you around because.
But Ethan,
and that's one
You
thing.
have to realize he is an officer. Officers really don't have that. You know,
But
he's an officer, Victorian era officer.
I've shot that Sharps when I was shooting it with those heavy loads offhand. My shoulder didn't hurt because I'm rolling with the recoil. And with them 50-70s, that's probably why I didn't notice is because I'm rolling with the recoil. Put that on the bench or get in the prone where you're into it and there's no rolling with the recoil. You're taking the recoil. There probably would have been a noticeable difference.
Yep, I think so. But Ethan put 10 shots or so from the prone through it, and he doesn't ever complain that it kicked very hard. So, but
well, he's also fired more guns than you and I will ever get a chance to.
That's true. That is true. Let's see. Laser rangefinders for the win. Yeah, Ethan went back out and officially rangefound because we've moved our table back and forth so many times that I always forget where we were at when we took these shots. And it's always over 300, but I think in the video, just to be safe, I put 275 on Duke's shots. But in reality, when we went back with the rangefinder, he was well over 300, like 320, actually, pretty close to that at that range. But
And you were constantly hitting the target fairly easy at 320.
It depends on how long you let your barrel cool, and I've noticed that. One of us will shoot, and then we'll stop and reset the camera, and we'll hit the first shot. Now, if you shoot 3 or 4 times, that barrel starts swelling up, and your accuracy falls apart. It's an interesting phenomenon. And then you stop, reset the camera, let it cool down for a minute, hand it to somebody else. They'll hit the first few shots, and then as it heats up, and we're talking 300 plus yards on just a torso target, by the way. So
the thing I noticed was my first shot at that 300-yard gong with that both of them was that I hit it right about where I was aiming. I was aiming kind of about the middle of the chest, and I'd hit in that area. And then after that, every shot, and I don't know, I know I wasn't flinching, but every shot, it was like between the 2 feet of that target. They were right down there, probably that far apart, hitting in the same spots.
And
that makes sense, though.
Here's the
way
thing
those barrels are made. They got, they're going to have stresses inside of them. Once it heats up, it's going to start doing all the. Unlike barrels today, like a brand new barrel you can get that has 0 stress in it that will stay.
And
just the way they're manufactured.
That black powder is making it really, really hot.
Really, really hot, really fast. Yeah.
Depending on how it's loaded too, because I know some of those bullets had a little tighter crimp than some of the other ones. That will all affect it once you start getting out there at distance.
Oh yeah.
You also have to bear in mind, had that been a full human length target, you would have took it in the waist every single time.
Yeah.
That was only a torso to head target.
Right.
If that had been a buffalo, you wouldn't have missed once all day, or a man on horseback. So at 300 yards, you were ringing them right in there because you were just that far under. Whenever you,
And that is amazing for that.
Killed the horse.
yeah, and it's not the first time, because we had another channel come out and shoot a couple months ago, and he was actually running an 1884 with a 500 grain bullet, and it was I can't think of his name. This is sad, but it was a friend of Ethan's, and he filmed it, and he probably fired 50 rounds at that target and missed twice. And that's just those big rifles, those big buff. They knew what they were doing when they designed those 50 caliber rounds for long range. They really did. Let's see over here. Okay, boys. God bless Dixie, home of the Rebels, wants to know your opinion on the LeMat revolver.
Overhyped curiosity.
I used to want so I actually still have squids. I got to get back to them. But before I ever played with one, I wanted one so bad. Like, I thought this was going to be the coolest gun. You know, it looks amazing. It is so much amazing about it. You hold it in your hand, you're like, this thing is massive. It's not very ergodynamic. It's really hard to cock because it's got a really weird, the way everything's lined up. I love the way they time the gun, how they use a pin. It's really neat how that works. But it is, I completely agree. It's an overhyped, way too big. It's not very realistic in the real world at all. It's cool, but it's more like an overhyped curiosity. That's about it, really. Gary?
Sheldon, you got any thoughts on the LeMat?
It's too French, even though it's American.
Very good point. Very good point. I never handled one really. I've definitely never shot one. I mean, I've held them in my hand at gun shows, but I've never. So I can't give an honest opinion outside of guns get pretty big in a hurry for me like that, especially if I'm carrying them every day. That's one of the reasons I really like that 62 Pocket Navy, a decent caliber and a smaller gun. And so,
the sights too. Those sights on the LeMat, they're massive. I mean, it's like they're huge. You're not going to do any real. I mean, it's not really meant for anything like hardcore aiming, but they're not very precise at all.
A guy that shoots black powder that I know told me, he says the thing about a LeMat is he says you're carrying something that's the weight of a Walker.
Mm-hmm.
He says you got 9 shots plus that shotgun barrel, but he says the shots are not as potent. If you're going to carry that much weight, carry the Walker. Less rounds, but a lot more knockdown power.
Sadly, simpler.
And also, he said the loading lever, once you break the loading lever, you'll never want a LeMat again.
Yeah.
And those
the loading lever is crap.
Oh, that's my opinion on it.
It's neat, but that's about it.
I can't bring myself to shoot anything hardly. It's not a Colt nowadays, sadly.
And the other thing is, if you're wanting to get one for historic reenactment, they were not really carried that much. There was, I think, Jeb Stuart's cavalry. Was it Jeb Stuart's?
And Beauregard. Carried one.
That's what it was, Beauregard. It was a very.
Unless you're playing him, you probably didn't see one.
Yeah,
Garrett, you have a bot in the chat.
Yeah, I see it. Let me see if I can remove him. Yeah, you're fast because it barely popped up over here before he just. Oh, somebody got him. Who got him?
I got him.
Yeah, you're fast.
I seen that about the time Sheldon said something. I'm like, I'm on it.
Yeah. Well, it was a noble cause.
Yeah.
Okay. Franklin Horse said, "Did you see Top Leader Mouse gave a nod to everything Black Powder the other day using his closing line?" Yeah, they're friends. They've collaborated before because Top Leader Mouse sent him some 12 gauge ammunition to try with Black Powder. So yeah, they've collaborated.
Old Jake. Old Jake's doing great.
I tried to get him on, but he had family in town. That'd have been a fun chat too.
He abandoned us. He abandoned us for family. How could you do such a thing?
Availability. His one of his latest videos, pretty recent video. Get into making black powder and use cottonwood, and you will have GoEx.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that was cool.
For that video.
The thing about cottonwood is it's probably the most common tree in the United States.
Except for where he lives, he doesn't have any.
That's true.
That was hilarious because he kept talking about somebody needs to send some cottonwood. Well, one day I had a cottonwood tree fall down on the fence, and Ethan and I were out there cutting it up, and I was sitting there holding my hand. And I was like, problem solved. Boxed it up, sent it out to Jake, and next thing you know, we got cottonwood powder.
So
I'm actually happy to hear that, just because I feel like it's a travesty to load anything but cottonwood into that my Griswold and Gunnison upstairs. I think it'd be cool to just I'm going to make some only for that gun and that gun only.
Confederate powder. Well,
I had an interest. Sorry, Garrett.
Go ahead.
Oh, if you read White Bull's book, that Stanley Vestal one, he talks about how, there was always someone trying to figure out how to become bulletproof back then. That was like the main issue.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this medicine man, he has a brilliant way to how to become bulletproof. So they try it, do all the stuff. He says that they wanted to use White Bull's revolver because he says a revolver is a brand new thing in those days. So
yeah, and
White Bull was 16 at Fetterman or something like that. So might have been early 70s or late 60s. I think early 70s. Well. He talks about how he loaded it with an inch of powder and a ball wrapped in buckskin, I think. He said the shots didn't kill the guy. I just wonder if flyers, but but one of them got hit.
So they were testing this. How do you test that? Except for shooting at your plane?
That's what they did. They stood out in the middle of the village, gathered everyone around, and shot at each other.
That is awesome.
Oh
man, that is awesome. That's my kind of people right there.
And then White Bull again, because he was somewhat of a ladies' man. If you read his book, you're like, oh, this guy does not know how to calm down.
Oh, that's pretty good.
And
my favorite. Oh, go ahead, Sheldon.
Oh, I was just gonna say that he was married to this one woman that was like really jealous, and no matter what, he was always jealous. And then he was seeing this younger girl, and she said, "Oh, basically, the gist was this: prove that you're faithful to me. Let me hold on to your revolver." He's like hesitant. He doesn't really want to give it to this girl, but he does. He reluctantly does, and he go on the warpath or something. His wife hears about it, goes to that other woman's tent, and, embarrasses her. He's saying, that's my husband's revolver. Give it back. And I forgot what else. But the jealous wife gets a hold of the revolver, and she goes back. So White Bull comes home, and he sees the jealous wife with the revolver. I wonder what was going through his head the second he seen her with that thing.
Run.
Well, are we bulletproof yet? That was the first thing that was going through.
Favorite story there of where they claimed that they'd bulletproof their shirts. The medicine man said bullets won't harm you, and they all line up in front of soldiers. I forgot what fight this was. I think it was in 1865. But they said that the soldiers' bullets will not harm you, and they line up in front of the soldiers, and the officer gives the order, draw saber. And the natives left the field.
You forgot the medicine against the saber.
It's like, we're bulletproof today, but we ain't saber-proof.
Yeah, bulletproof medicine man, he I guess around the time he did it, okay, so this actually might be early 70s, because they talk about the fight they had with the Métis up in Montana where the Mati kind of had their own little circle or dug in. And one of the stipulations was they couldn't wear anything red. And I guess one of the guys who did the whole ceremony had like a little piece of red cloth on his shooter's bag, so he got hit.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, what was it? Roman nose. Said his medicine was strong, no bullet would touch him, but
Wrong
he had
spoon.
ate food that was cooked with a metal spoon. And they said that's, ruined his medicine. That's why he got killed at Beecher Island.
Yeah, those guys back then, they took it serious, but that was their entire life. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the things that it sounds silly to us now, but back then that was some big superstitions.
yeah, that two leggings, that Crow Warrior, he talks. I'm sorry, but like you said, nowadays it sounds silly. But he talks about how he's always wanted a vision. He's kind of getting mad that he really didn't get one he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to go have a vision. He said it was like kind of where like south of where Hardin is now. He talks about basically going to a prairie dog village, and he's doing the whole vision thing, starving himself, and he even I think he cuts off a finger or some shit. I'm sorry. Oh my god.
That's okay. You got a slip. That's fine this time.
And he's sitting there basically bleeding out, self-starving. He's having, he's sitting there having himself a wicked vision. And someone from his camp shows up and it kind of disturbs it. And the guy's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you're having a vision right now." Takes off. I'm like, man, he's bleeding out.
I guess he just does that every now and then. You walk up to your friend bleeding out. Oh, I guess he's just having fun out here in the woods. Oh, I didn't know you were having a vision. It's kind of
I'm
obvious.
sorry, I was reading that. I mean, I understand, that was, a big thing for them, but I was reading like, man, if I caught one of my friends doing that, I'd probably rush him to the hospital right away.
Yeah.
I think he said he was gashing his arms and legs or something like that, so he's really bleeding.
Yep.
I mean, if they knew what they like, say you grew up around that, knowing that that's how you would get a vision.
Yeah.
The second you walked up to him, you should have known that he was trying to get a vision, right? So why would you disturb him?
Mm-hmm.
I see it in both ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure
I mean, like,
blood loss probably helps in that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it does too. And just being so hungry and probably dehydrated probably helps with that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, on that superstition thing I was reading in George Bird Grinnell's Cheyenne Encyclopedia. It's a 2-volume set. They talk about some of the Cheyenne superstitions in there, and one of the things they mention is like if they break a taboo or break something on their medicine, the way to remedy that is they have to eat the heart of a slain enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those that I think it was intentionally done that the punishment for that or the recourse to correct that was so horrible that nobody ever wanted to violate any of those superstitions or those taboos.
That would make sense.
They took it seriously.
Well, here's the thing about superstition, because I always hate it when people start, downing people for what they've believed in history or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Shut the lights off for a few weeks and see what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
That I still get like that one time we were on the phone late at night. We were talking about, I forgot exactly what we were talking about. It was very similar to that. Like people believing in monsters and all that stuff. Like go out in the middle of the woods and turn the lights off and have no light at all for a long period of time and tell me what you believe. And I was like, that actually gave me goosebumps because you could say you could know everything in the world and everything you said today, but I guarantee you there are not very many people who go in the woods with no light in the middle of the night and stay there all night with nothing.
You can
I don't care how.
You can have the most powerful army in the world, but if they've got no illumination whatsoever at night, and something else can see you, you know it.
Like my dad, he's a veteran police officer. He's been doing it for 30 years, and he says every time a new guy, everyone that should know what he's doing, when they're chasing someone at night, and he says they got their flashlight on, he stays away from because because the guy they're trying to track down, he sees the flashlight, he's gonna stay away from that.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, after working at a hospital for coming up on 9 months now, the only more superstitious lot than sailors is hospital employees.
Really? I didn't know that.
A certain Q word that you do not say, because anytime you say that, things get hectic.
Yeah, that's the same superstition that the cops and jailers have. I was a jailer there for a while. As soon as you said it, everyone kind of looked at you like they want to smack you over the head.
Yep. And full moon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but a full moon correlates with
Crazy people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's one of those things that's like, it's crazy. You never know when it's going to happen, but there are those superstitions there.
Yep.
Like,
And they're probably there for a reason. I'm
Very
sure
old,
that
very
enough
old
people-
defense mechanism.
Yep.
like there's that superstition like amongst natives is you never whistle at night. But I didn't hear that until I was like 15 years old, so guess who still whistles at night? I get people mad when I do that. Like, oh, no kidding. I didn't know that. Start whistling.
All right, guys, let's run for another 9 minutes. That'll bring us 2.5 hours if everybody can last that long. You gonna be here that
I
long?
don't know what to do.
Okay. Let's go through some last of these comments here. Jason Dunham said Beauregard seems to be the patron of the Lamat.
Yep.
I'll get back to
I mean,
that.
it was built because of him as well. I mean, that was like
Yeah.
his one of his family members, like step family member, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doc said by Landon C said, I will verify that Duke is right. Sailors and the medical persons are very superstitious, and I'm both. Yeah. That's a good point. Let's see. I'll get back to your question there. God bless Dixie, because that's going to be a little more involved. Mill Creek Range said, okay, guys, got to go work in the morning. Have a good night, everyone. See you later, Benji. Franklin Horse said, devil take the woman for they never can be easy.
Usher rigging during da. What for the daddy-o? What for the daddy-o? There's whiskey in
In the jar.
By Landon C said, Garrett, I'll bring this up because I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right because I call it something else, I think. Garrett, you or Duke ought to do a video demonstrating the supine shooting position, if that's how you pronounce it, with the M1866, specifically off toe variation. Is that what I call the Creedmoor stance? Laying down, rocked into elbow, off the toe balance? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well,
Doc?
yeah, and something. And I tried doing that one time, and I'm sitting there, and it's like, that's going to be really hard not to take a toe off.
Well, that's why you think he's saying doing it with the
People were
66.
shorter back then.
You get a
Is
longer
that what you
barrel,
call it, off the
full
toe?
40-inch barrel.
Yeah, people were a lot shorter back then. So off the toe with that three-band three-band Springfield, yeah, no problem. But for me at 6'1", shooting off the toe, by the time I get that thing out there, I'm pointing at my ankle.
Yeah, I hope that's the position you're talking about there. I think it is.
Yeah, I know which one he's talking about. Yeah.
I need to have Ethan do it. I bet he could do it better than me.
Well, he's a little shorter.
Yeah, and with that 66, it should be all right. Sheldon, what's that name?
Isatai.
Isatai said that the Comanche and Kiowa at Second Adobe Wall, just as long as no one killed a skunk, but a couple of Kiowa killed a skunk and ate it.
And we will not translate out what that name means.
Okay, is that the one you always talk about? Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know that.
I don't speak Comanche, so.
I was reading it. It's in Adobe Walls. They talk about what it translates out to, and it's not a nice name.
If you go back and he says it, if you go back and watch the Tales of the Trails episode on that subject, good reason to go watch that Tales of the
Part
Trails.
of that is wolf. I'll tell you that much. We ain't going to get into the rest of it.
Franklin Horse said, good night, guys. Work comes early, and that's pretty well where we're at on comments for that moment. If anybody's got any questions or God bless Dixie, you had a question. What about the Colt Dragoon? Go Duke. He was the one who asked about Lamat's.
Yeah. I like the Colt Dragoon. I carried one for a living history event on my hip. It's not bad. It's not the greatest. But yeah, the Colt Dragoon is a fine gun. It's basically, the improvement of the Walker. Got a little more knockdown power. But it was liked by people out on the plains. But the thing is when that 1860 hit the market, it started gaining a lot of favor. And you lose some power going from, the Dragoon down. But there were still people using Dragoons out on the plains, through the 1860s.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, great gun. Not one for the faint of heart. If you're the size of Maddie Ross, do not try to use it.
Unless you can find a stump to rest it on. What do you think, Salvador or Sheldon? You got anything on the Dragoons?
They're nice. I can see why they would like them. I mean, if it's not broken, you can continue to use it. And you have the sticklers who would keep using it. I mean, it's a good gun, heavy.
Any records of native use that you know of?
No, I think back then they just called them just revolver. So the only word, there's like 2 words in Lakota I can think of for basically a gun, like a handgun. And like the word for gun in Lakota is mazawankha. You can shorten that to mazakha. And then if you say mazawankha petechala, that's a small gun. And then the word for revolver is ishakpe, which actually just translates to 6 mouths.
6 mouths.
That's
cool.
That's cool.
That means we have to call a Patterson something else.
Izapta.
5 mouths.
Yeah, Izapta.
Oh, cool. There you go. You can differentiate.
A lot of the pictures that you see, like ledger drawings, they're almost just generic revolvers, but sometimes some of them will draw like a open top Colt or a Remington. But the thing is, it depends on the person, and they're basically copying the gun they have. But,
All right, Snapper. Tell us about how much you hate the Dragoon. How you
Oh,
love
it's
it
the
and wish
horrible.
it didn't exist.
I love mine. I absolutely love mine. And matter of fact, it doesn't feel like a big gun. The originals don't because of the grip. The grip is smaller than on the replicas, so the gun doesn't feel as big. It's still a big gun. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel as big. It actually feels just like if you're holding an 1860 Army and you closed your eyes. If you just a tiny bit heavier, and that's exactly what a Dragoon feels like. It is not that much of a difference. It is bigger, so yeah, if you're going to put it on your hip, you're going to feel it because it's bigger, and a tiny bit heavier. But I absolutely love mine. I still think the Dragoon is probably one of the best looking, other than like the 72 open top for the open tops. I love the proportions of the Dragoon. I think it's just gorgeous. And yeah, everybody should have one. They're great. I love mine.
I'll say
that
this.
one picture.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I like that picture of Rip. Was it?
Rip Ford?
Yeah, he has those 2 in the holsters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think he was that
Oh,
tall.
yeah. Yeah, he does. Yeah. And they're really fancy holsters, too, because they're full flaps.
Rip Ford was quite the character. Try to do a Tales of the Trail someday, dude, just on Rip Ford.
Yeah. And whenever I get around to asking Doug Dukes on, we'll get into that on one of the lives. But yeah, that is one of those. And I've got a lot of the books on Texas history, so I could get into him. But I think I have a book that's on him. I'm pretty sure I do. I ain't going to try to dig it out now. It is behind a pile of stuff.
I'll say this about my thoughts on the Dragoon. There's a lot of horse pistols. I consider even the Beaumont Adams as a horse pistol. Walker is a horse pistol. I think the Rogers and Spencer, to an extent, is a horse pistol, at least in caliber and weight. Out of all those, the third model Dragoon is my favorite for its history. How many were made? 25,000. Well, of all models, but the third, it really got out there. It really got used by a lot of people. And like Duke was saying, it was supplanted by the 1860, but you also have to remember that the 1860, like getting a hold of an 1860 during the Civil War as a civilian would be difficult. And then they quit making them after 1864, after the fire. And so for a long period of time. So that Dragoon is in the hands of those Westerners. I honestly think a lot of them, that would have been their go-to gun all the way up until, at least the early 1870s.
Yeah.
And Wild Bill Hickok, he carried one when he was out, because at the time period we were doing out there at Fort Larned, Wild Bill Hickok was one of the scouts that was operating in that area. He carried a Dragoon.
He was said to have been able to shoot a seashell into at 50 yards with his Dragoon. That was reported out of Kansas City at the time. So that, yeah. Anyway, all right, you guys ready to shut her down? We have no more comments.
Yeah. Max says it's time to go lay down.
You did good, Duke. You did good. You made it through.
Yeah, I did. There were some tense moments there.
All right, guys. Anybody got anything to say, or you ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. As always, guys, trust in God. Keep powder dry. Bye.